is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
A thrown pick into triple coverage, a come from behind 17-point deficit to score 27 unanswered points and lead your team to the Super Bowl. All that and more on this edition of Total Football Talk. Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 22 of Total Football Talk. I am your co-host, Drew Willingham, sitting in the seat that my man Cole Johnson normally sits in as he is out of town, heading back home today. We have got another great person in here to fill my shoes as I try to fill Cole's shoes. This man was definitely on here earlier in the season and is now here for his second appearance on Total Football Talk. You can catch him on the three-point conversion with his great coverage along with A7BN Sports, Black and Gold Banneret, my man who helps me out with some content here on the Sertoba Media interwebs. If you are watching on that channel right now, give it up. The man, myth, and legend, my man, Kyle Nash. Welcome back there, brother.
Hey, glad to be in. Don't forget my work with the Jaguar Report and also, of course, the Duval Dive. If you're watching on the PSF app, that's the reason why there were so many spotted cats on my screen there. By the way, bing to both in that particular piece. And listen, I'm glad to be back here. But, Drew, I'm going to warn you already. Your intro alone tells me as a student of the game, class is going to be in session to make some corrections here.
Hey, I cannot wait to see what these corrections will be. My man Kyle Nash always keeps me in check on these facts, as I had to keep that in mind for a guest to come in and try to fill my shoes. And I know someone like yourself can definitely do that as you're keeping me in check. But Kyle, speaking of keeping things in check, things were kept in check this past Sunday. And we definitely have some things to cover on this episode of TFT. With that being said, let's go and get this started with the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
Considering how, we went from, having like 16 games in a week, and 15, 16 games in a week to now down to where we had 2 games. And we got the Pro Bowl this upcoming Sunday and then the Super Bowl Sunday the following week. And then we are done with football for a while, or at least for the NFL. We got the UFL to look forward to, which we will cover here on Total Football Talk. But with that being said, since we're down to 2 games, we've got a upset of the week and a game of the week. Let's go ahead and get it into the upset of the week. And here for the upset of the week, we got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Baltimore Ravens. And yes, I did write the slate for this week, but I chose that this was the upset of the week because I believe that between the 2 games, we felt like there was a really strong chance that the Ravens were going to dethrone these defending Super Bowl champions and make it to the Super Bowl, even though this was the 6th straight AFC Championship appearance for the Kansas City Chiefs. And with that being said, Patrick Mahomes, 30 of 39, 241 yards and a passing touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco, 24 carries, 68 yards and a touchdown. Swifty Nation Zone, Travis Kelce, 11 receptions, 116 receiving yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs defense had 4 sacks on the day on Lamar Jackson, one of the most mobile quarterbacks today and in NFL history. 20 of 37, 272 yards, a touchdown and interceptions, and 8 carries for 54 yards for Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers, 5 receptions, 115 yards and a touchdown. But I think what we're going to most remember him for is that lost fumble in the end zone, along with the Ravens running backs outside of Lamar Jackson combining for only 27 rushing yards due to the way the offensive line was playing in this day. And the Ravens defense, compared to the Chiefs defense, only having 2 sacks in comparison to the 4 sacks for the Chiefs. When it comes to this situation right here and all the stats I just laid out for you in the blueprints there, Kyle Nash, what are your thoughts from this game right here? What say you about this game that we saw this past Sunday?
Listen, by the way, I appreciate you picking it as the upset of the week, no question. But I also would have gotten votes, accepted votes from Raheem Morris being named the Atlanta coach over Bill Belichick. But that's either here nor there, Drew Willingham. Listen, you're mentioning a lot of stats there. There's a couple things I think that are getting left under the way by the wayside. To your credit, Drew Willingham, you mentioned the performance of the offensive line for the Ravens. I don't necessarily feel like it was an O-line failure as much as it was an overall game plan failure. Listen, when the Chiefs started blitzing, they were relying on Lamar Jackson to make the Chiefs just pay for it. I watched it happen personally on Sunday Night Football back on week 15 or 16. I forget what it was at Everbank Stadium when Lamar Jackson did that very thing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know, I was there, of course, doing my thing for the 3-point conversion in the Jaguar report. Bing! So I've seen that work before. That being said, maybe people haven't figured this out yet, but I don't care that Patrick LaVon Mahomes II made some great plays, including a very early 4th and 2 to Travis Michael Kelce, who had 10 catches. As you mentioned, breaking Jerry Rice's playoff reception record, by the way. Those were all great and well, but we are not talking enough about the fact that that group contained Lamar Jackson on defense, and a good portion of it is the Ravens making basically no adjustments, saying, you know what, Lamar, you made a nice little move to escape, have an excellent touchdown to open the game, where all I can do was text my friends 3 words, Lamar Jackson. And then after that, he was rendered, I'm not going to say useless, but he had a lot more problems as the game went on. When your quarterback is your basic ground attack and having to escape blitzes, dudes get tired at that level. And then they just started to catch up. The lost fumble you mentioned that opened for the Ravens, however, was Lamar Jackson fumbling first, right? He's the one that gave the Chiefs the opportunity there early on. And listen, I know his interception was absolutely terrible, Drew Willingham, but if the officials actually call Odell Beckham Jr. having a Chief draped all over his back in the end zone, that play doesn't even happen. That being said, I'm not here to blame the refs, Drew Willingham. I am here to blame a team that looked like they were a bunch of youths, not Utes. That's the Utah college team and what Vincent LaGuardia Gambini refers to as a youth, right? No, youths in this case taking place with the Ravens. The lack of composure was palpable. You mentioned the fumble, of course, by Zay Flowers, who's an excellent draft pick. He's also the same dude that picked up a taunting penalty to cancel out the attack on that very same drive. If they had those 10 yards, maybe dude isn't in a position to have to reach for it. Credit to the Chiefs defense for knocking it loose, but there was a little bit of luck there. The one last thing, Drew Willingham, how come last week when the ball getting fumbled out of bounds into the end zone, but then conversely, I'm not hearing that energy to support the Ravens and how lucky the Chiefs got? I'm just throwing that out.
My bad for throwing you off with the background music, as I'm still getting used to playing Cole. Okay, so Cole has it set to a certain volume level, and I had to do my best to try to throw it in there. But when it comes to this situation, I know you like to use the player's first, middle, and last name, okay? And that's okay. But the one thing that I was getting tired of hearing for maybe the past 4 to 6 weeks, and maybe I was hearing it, I didn't hear it all season because I wasn't covering the Ravens, but hearing the name Lamarvelous, I was getting tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
And, he was definitely not Lamarvelous this past Sunday. But, I would say what you said as far as the overall game plan being exposed was definitely something that we saw in this game because, when the Chiefs scored on the first drive and then the Ravens answered, we looked like we were having a game, early on in the first quarter when they went back to back and it was 7-0. But from that point forward, it was definitely the Chiefs defense that basically had their way with this team. I mean, when was the last time that we can honestly sit here? I know it's happened, but it's been a while. We can honestly sit here and say that we saw Lamar Jackson take 4 sacks in a game.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there, I mean, I know he hasn't been in the league but for half a decade, and he's played with a pretty decent team for the majority of that. The offensive line has had their issues here and there, but it's the defense that they've really had to repair and rebuild. And this defense this year was probably the closest thing we saw to the last Super Bowl team from the Ravens defense because they were clicking on all cylinders. They went into this playoff run very, very healthy. So when I think about that, you got Lamar Jackson standing back there, and he's taking 4 sacks. And you would think that more so on the Chiefs side because overall the story of this year has been how the offense has regressed, but their defense got better, okay? And you would think that Patrick Mahomes would be more likely to take 4 sacks to Lamar Jackson, although both quarterbacks have the ability to scramble. Lamar Jackson's more known for it because he usually picks up more rushing yards in a game. But I would say I would agree with you on the fact of you've got one team that was, A+ as always with their game planning, which is why they went to 6 straight AFC championships, which is why they're in the Super Bowl now for the 4th time out of the past 5 years. Half a decade of greatness there just from having Patrick Mahomes. And you've had greatness as your head coach since he came in 2013 when he was mistakenly fired by the Eagles because the Eagles, they got 1 Super Bowl, but another Kelsey brother could have multiple Super Bowls had Andy Reid stayed there for the rest of that tenure up until now. I believe so. Now, of course, you don't think that he would have probably got Patrick Mahomes and all that stuff. So many dynamics of how that landscape would be different had he did stay. But at least the Eagles got one Kelsey brothers got one. Another one's heading there for an opportunity to get his 3rd one. And there's a lot of questions surrounding that. There's a lot of people that were upset on social media about the possibility of it being rigged. They're not going to watch the Super Bowl and this, that, and the third that I was looking at Sunday night up and through yesterday. And there was this one person, I'm not going to drop names because we when we do this, we don't throw any shade, but you read the post and you reacted to it. And I'm going to say it right here. Someone that had said that they were upset that Brock Purdy was in the Super Bowl before, Lamar Jackson. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's been an MVP and, he is the guy on the Ravens. But the 49ers, whether you think that they bought their championship or not, because, they brought in Chase Young. But, hey, that's the benefit of having a quarterback on a rookie scale contract that's only in the 2nd year of the deal. Of course, you're going to have room to make moves. And if you were any of the other 31 teams in the league in this same position, you would have done the same thing during the season and traded for Chase Young too, especially for what you got him for. So looking at this situation right here, the Chiefs made all the right moves in this game when you think about that. And I know I was dropping back into the 49ers, but it's just an example of how you can build a team by having a great front office. The Chiefs have had a great front office for the past half decade. Your team has definitely had a great front office as we've come to learn over the past few years with, with everything that's happened. So given that and looking at this game right here for the Chiefs and the Ravens, I mean, Lamar Jackson on top of that too, You cannot throw that ball in triple coverage in the end zone to throw that pick at the end of the game. Like when your last possession, when he had the opportunity to go down there and make it a game. Well, this was before he ended up scoring, so it was still 17-7 when he threw that, I believe, because he was 17-7. Then you had 17-7. No, no. I don't know, what am I saying? 17-7. Yeah, because they scored the field goal. Yeah. So looking at this way, had you scored that touchdown and not thrown into the triple coverage, we would be having a different situation, I believe, had that game gone into overtime. I think by that point, they might have had the momentum to take it had it gone into overtime. What do you think?
And listen, that's the one place where I threw in the officials as a legitimate gripe as to what happened. Obviously, listen, the selection of to whom to throw the ball wasn't necessarily bad in and of itself. To your point, he spotted it so late that by the time it arrived, triple coverage was a factor.
Yes.
That was something that would have been more of a timing route if you were going to attempt that, in my opinion. But yeah, it's not that it wasn't there, it's that it came out too late. And by the way, Drew Willingham, like I said, with the whole Odell Beckham Jr. thing, if that call is made, I'm pretty confident that the Ravens get it in from the 1 yard line as it was committed in the end zone. So yeah, I think that's a whole scenario that obviously changes the complexities of the game. Does that guarantee a victory for the Ravens? Certainly not. But hey, one more shout out to the Ravens. You definitely mentioned the defense, and rightly so. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact everyone's like, oh, the Ravens scored only 10 points on the strength of 2 end zone turnovers. Cool. We already brought up Flowers. We don't need to talk about it again. By the way, holding Patrick LaVon Mahomes II and Travis Michael Kelce to 17 points is a good feat we're not talking enough about. This entirely was the Ravens clipping their own wings. And listen, after that first touchdown, when it came to the end zone, quote, the Ravens never score, at least not in that part of the field.
Before I get my take on that, Ryan McCarthy's in the house, says, good morning, gents. Wow, Cole and Drew's look has really changed. Sorry, went full R-Truth for a moment. Laugh out loud. Yes, the famous R-Truth from the WWE storylines. Definitely getting his people confused. Cole is traveling home today, and to give my man the day off, I went on and took the reins. Kyle Nash is here, and I even wrote the slate for the show to give Cole a total day off. So the first time in the 22-episode history that I wrote the slate. Hope I did well for you, my man there, Cole. If you're listening on the way there home, let me know if I did okay out here in these streams. Now, when it comes to this,
because I wanted to try to do the John Cena, but I don't think it would work. Can you see me?
Well, your shoulder was still in the picture. That's really fully.
I'm too big for the space for that to work. I can't do John Cena.
Oh yeah, Kyle. We'll have another podcast where we teach others the art of the you can't see me, and that way we will definitely get you up to speed on the WWE euphemisms. But when it comes to this right here, I mean, Travis Kelce over 100 receiving yards. It has definitely been known. I mean, they brought this up on the New Heights podcast, I believe it was a week or so ago, when they said that when Swifty's in the house, he has over 100 receiving yards and a touchdown every game on average that she is there. When she's not there, he's got 46.6 yards, something like that, no touchdowns. So she's got an actual show in Tokyo the night before the Super Bowl. And it says that she's going to be able to make it by kickoff to the Super Bowl. I think that not only the money that's generated from Taylor Swift being around $300 and some million with these games, the NFL, but when you look at the fact that his production is there, you have to have her there. And the Chiefs Nation is definitely going hard to make sure that she is there. But look at it.
Doesn't have to do it. Hold on, Drew Willingham. Let's not forget this is a situation up there with Gisele Bündchen and Tom Brady. Okay, Taylor Swift has her own empire. If she desires to fly from the Orient, she could come on in and do that on her own time, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like if she had planned not to, which I don't think that she would at this point, because considering how public your relationship is and, the success that the Chiefs are having. And I have been one to say that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, don't hold your breath that Andy Reid will be the only one retiring this offseason. I got a feeling that Kelsey may retire if they win this Super Bowl, and especially if Andy Reid retires. Because think about this. If Andy Reid retires, then you're basically rebuilding all over again, okay? Because you got a different coach in there, and having a different head coach can definitely change the dynamic of, the momentum that this team had been carrying for the past half decade. Would Kelsey want to go and experience a potential rebuild with the organization based on leadership? And especially with the murmurs out there that potentially Belichick can take over if Reid does step down, even though I don't believe that. I think Mike Vrabel has a better chance of going in there than Belichick. But, hey, we'll get to that here in a little bit. When it comes to this situation right here, that is my guess. I'm not one to make bets on a regular basis or anything. Do not put this on a DraftKings bet because you may lose money if you're going off of the words. I'm not saying on that, but I would say don't be surprised if that happens, because I can see it happening. He's only 2 years younger than his older brother, who was potentially thinking about retiring after last season, after age 35 season. Travis is only 34, and yes, he's definitely playing at a great level right now, but I would not be surprised, again, if he retires, especially when you're dating the biggest pop star, arguably at this point of all time. She's loaded and could definitely, if the relationship gets serious enough, they get married. He doesn't have to play football anymore. Why would you want to put yourself through that, potentially get banged up even more when you have a long life ahead of you, my man? I'm just saying, don't be surprised, Kyle Nash.
No, hey, listen, the logic's there. I mean, Travis Michael Kelsey, the homemaker, sure, whatever. I just, at the end of the day, man, I believe Travis Kelsey retiring is a good thing. And by the way, let's not act like he'll just be sitting at home. The New Heights podcast is legit, and I think they'll be just fine on that media empire front as well. Andy Reid retiring, not as sure about that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talks in the media about that. We've seen, especially on ESPN and stuff, but certain things can be far-fetched. People look more at the Wikipedia and their age and getting, I guess, upset about the fact that, or not upset, but wondering when that move is going to come. And it could come, but at the same time, I feel like it would be really hard for you to step down when this is, one of the greatest dynasties we've seen since the Patriots, and they haven't cheated their way to the top.
Oh!
So looking at it that way, at least there hasn't been proof that there has been any cheating going on, but people are getting upset at the Chiefs. I actually am not upset at the Chiefs. I like what I'm seeing. I know you, as a 49ers fan, probably would have much rather seen the Ravens because you would have most not.
No way.
Yeah, but I feel like you have a better chance of getting the result that they got this past Sunday, being the Chiefs, than against the Ravens team if you would have played them in the Super Bowl, than the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are in their fourth Super Bowl out of 5 years for a reason, Kyle Nash. Maybe not so much more in the past on their defense because they used to go for it on fourth down a whole lot more because they didn't have the support on the other side of the ball, and they were afraid of that, not getting the ball back without being down by 7 to 10 points had they punted the ball, before instead of going for it on fourth down. Now, they can actually punt the ball and rely on their defense 90% of the time to stop the other side and get the ball back without any damage being done. So
I just don't see that. And listen, I don't know if this is the time you want to get into this topic or not, Drew Willingham, but Lamar Demetrius Jackson is far more dangerous as a matchup to the 49ers than Patrick LeVon Mahomes II. I'm not saying Mahomes won't get his. I'm not saying that Travis Michael Kelsey won't have his moments as well. But at the end of the day, what they have with Baltimore and Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr., along now with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Polite, is far more difficult to cover in the secondary where the Niners are weakest compared to what the Chiefs had, where, what is it? Rashee Rice The other names there far less intimidating on the receiver core, and of course they got Travis Michael Kelsey. Where the Niners are weakest is in that secondary, and while Lamar Jackson represents yet another angle to tear the defense up, as he did during the regular season, I might add, Patrick LaVon Mahomes II is still a runner, but not the same way that Lamar Jackson is. And then, oh, by the way, let's just say Brock Purdy already has a history of struggling against the Ravens front. The Chiefs front is still excellent, but it's not the same. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, one bit of strategy I know the Chiefs will use: don't put Chris Jones across from Trent Williams. I'll just say that.
Hey, I'm not mad at your take. I respect it, but I disagree with it, because if that was the case, the Ravens would be in the Super Bowl this upcoming matchup.
You've forgotten how much the offense had hamstringed them, sir, with their turnovers.
Yes. Yeah, he did. I mean, I don't know if that was more so impactful. I think Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling for the Lions, which we'll get up into that here shortly, was more impactful than that fumble turnover for the Ravens.
That's interesting. We'll get into that when we get to that game. I'll put it this way.
Look at how close the other game was.
We know for a fact that Zay Flowers' fumble took points off the board. We don't know that about Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, that's a good argument. That is a good argument there. But looking at this, I mean, when you're down 17-7 for the majority of the game until only 2.5 minutes left into the game, that's why I make that argument, because you could have been in the game a whole lot sooner had that not taken place. And the other situation of the fumble, that game was only a 3-point game at the end. I know we can go back and forth with that one right there.
Oh, I'll gladly, when we get to the Niner-Lions game, I'll tell you exactly why that 3-point deficit at the end is deceiving.
Well, with that being said, let's not waste any more time and take it into the, what I would like to say is the game of the week. And here with the game of the week, there was only 2 games, and we are now at the second one. The San Francisco 49ers host the Detroit Lions and win 34-31. Brock Purdy, 20 of 31, 267 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Christian McCaffrey, 20 carries, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions on 42 yards in addition to that as well. Deebo Samuel, 8 receptions, 89 yards and a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk, 3 receptions, 68 yards and a touchdown. Nick Bosa, 2 sacks on the defensive side to lead the way over there. Fred Warner, when it came to tackles, leading the way with 9 tackles and 4 assists. When it comes to the Lions, Jared Goff, 25 of 41, 273 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery, 15 carries, 93 yards and a touchdown with 2 receptions on top of that for 20 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries, 45 yards and a touchdown with 3 receptions and 11 yards. Also had that lost fumble that we were talking about earlier as well. Sam Laporta, 9 receptions, 97 yards for the rookie, making a big impact there on that side of the ball as he was all season long. Along with Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 receptions for 87 yards. And when it came to the Lions offense, 1 for 3 on 4th down conversions, as Dan Campbell had those decisions to make, and it didn't quite come into fruition for him. With all that being said, Kyle Nash, looking at this game, I know this was a situation where you were not happy probably the first half, and the emotions probably did a complete 180 in the second half, as there were some people sitting on their podcast and doing play-by-play saying that this game was over. And then you come back to the second half, and you could, and without a shadow of doubt, it'd be easy to think that was going to happen going into halftime, considering how the team had played in the first half. But they traded places. Somebody got a hold of some ayahuasca or something in the Lions locker room as the decisions were being made. When it comes to all that being said, what are your thoughts and your biggest takeaways from this NFC Championship game?
Listen, I think the stat that's getting sneaky overlooked here in this whole scenario is surrounding Jared Goff. And many times on this podcast, first of all, listen, you're absolutely right to open the game, Drew Willingham. Things did not go well for the 49ers. The only thing I could take heart in is that both on the Student of the Game and Huddle Up podcasts, bing, that I had given advice that would make America money. Vegas was disrespecting Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions and making that spread entirely too big. You're welcome for the cash if you listen to the lesson, ladies and gentlemen. But the punchline is this. Everybody has pointed out, and rightly so, that the opening half of football was dominated by Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. But how was it dominant? It's because of the way they were gashing the Niners for the on the ground running the football. No disrespect to Chase Young or your Red Tails, Commanders, okay? But dude had a terrible first half in run stoppage, okay? Like, people were wondering if he had fallen asleep. I'm like, listen, the game only started at 6:30. He's not a senior citizen. Oh, and he's even on the West Coast. What are we doing here? But all the above to say this, Drew Willingham, the Lions having Jared Goff throw the ball 41 times makes no inkling of sense to me overall. Now, granted, I get it. I'm not there calling the plays, and I have so much respect for Dan Campbell. I feel I must reiterate it right now because I need to keep both my kneecaps. I have young children to chase around, okay? So all I'm going to say, I think it starts there. Oh, but Kyle, you said that Jared Goff's a good game manager. Yes, I did. And I think a game manager is used as a slur against a quarterback, and that's an ignorant occurrence that happens among NFL fans. However, this dude throwing the ball 41 times explains why the game manager title, be it a slur or not, is put on one Jared Goff. Now, we were talking about the lost fumble by Jahmyr Gibbs. Listen, that only continued a momentum that was building. Did everybody see that Ayuk catch? By the way, everyone seems to keep leaving out the and one on the pass interference call that took place there too. Ain't often you see and one. That's more of an NBA thing than it is an NFL thing, but I digress. Listen, the Gibbs fumble was a momentum piece. It did not lead to direct points. Sure, maybe the Lions would not have scored on that drive. It's perfectly possible. And everyone, by the way, is also right, speaking of momentum, in Dan Campbell being criticized for not kicking that field goal. Them missing those fourth downs certainly increased any momentum that took place. But at day's end, the Niners, conversely to Jared Goff, had Brock Purdy only throwing the ball 31 times. Drew Willingham, the Niners ran the ball despite being down 17 at one point, 33 times in the game. That's right. They did not abandon the run against the NFL's number 2 run defense. Now, if you want to call the Ayuk catch luck, that's fine too. Listen, Gibbs and people had a few lucky catches on the Lions side too. I think a lot of those balance out. But for my money, it was having a game plan that could be sustained. And there were elements where the Lions seemed like they panicked, not just the fourth down calls by Dan Campbell. Let's get some of these players their flack too. There was some easy conversion passes dropped by tight ends and the like. That was a huge part of the Niners' comeback, overtaking to take the lead there. At some point, the Niners are up 10 at the end of the game. And this is why I think Jahmyr Gibbs' fumble is less impactful than Zay Flowers. Sure, the Lions eventually got in a position to bring it within 3, but at one point, they were down 2 scores. I feel like the Lions may have been, I haven't done the math, I could be wrong on this, but the Lions may have been down for 2 scores longer than the Ravens were. Or at least they should have been had the Odell Beckham Jr. call take place or Zay Flowers actually score the football. So bringing that all home, as I promised I would there, fans, yeah, for me, those are the biggest factors. Tons of props, however, to the Lions defense. Yes, I know they gave up 34 points, but were put in bad position a lot by their not only their coach and their sideline, but that fumble as well.
There's some good points there. So you would say more so for the Lions, fourth down calls than their actual production in the second half? Do you think would you say more so, even though you don't want to get your kneecaps bitten off, would you say it was more so the gambling play calling on fourth down, or would you say it was more so along the lines of they were still throwing the ball way too much in the second half? Because that's how I felt too. I felt like you had something great going on in the first half with the running game. Now, in their defense, starting out the second half, it looks like the 49ers defense in the third quarter, they stepped it up. They noticed there was one thing that they were not doing in the first half. They were not blitzing enough. They were not applying enough pressure. And in the third quarter, I know you threw some shade a little bit on Chase Young a little bit with that take, just a little bit, smidge with the commies and all that stuff. I can't get mad. I can't get mad at what you said. But when I think about it, it's like, when they went to that locker room, you had to have had George Kittle and some of the other ones step up and say certain things, because Chase Young in the second half played especially in the third quarter, played completely different than he did in the first half of the game. I mean, the pressure he was applying along with his teammates right there, they were applying the pressure. Nick Bosa getting the sacks in there. That was something that we did not really see in the first half. And had that not been a thing in the third quarter, we would not have seen those 17 unanswered points in the third quarter, along with the additional 10 more points in the fourth quarter before, they got the field goal or whatnot in there. So looking at
great take, Drew. The only comeback I'd have is 41 times. 41 times.
Oh, yeah, the 41 times, the amount of throws the man threw. I mean, especially when you're sitting up here and saying that Jared Goff is a great game manager. That's how the Rams got to the Super Bowl, the first time with McVay. They did lose that game. But, hey, Jared Goff, he probably maximized his best potential that year. And this year, we saw the second coming of that. And the special part about that was he did it with a different team, a different coach, a different structure. With that, I feel like Jared Goff deserves to be thought of a little bit more than the game manager. You can easily say that Brock Purdy is a game manager because of the way he plays within the system for Shanahan over there on the 49ers side. But Jared Goff, I feel like, especially what he's accomplished with this team, with the Lions now, getting to a team that the Lions that we have not seen in the NFC Championship, a team that we have not seen make it to the Super Bowl, a team that hasn't had success really since Barry Sanders was there. And to do that with the guy that was a castaway part of a trade for Matt Stafford, to go to LA and have some type of quarterback in Detroit, he's definitely exceeded expectations, like way out the water. Has definitely done his job. And now you have to look at the fact that the play calling, like you said, 41 passes, along with, you put the icing on the cake of, their identity, because they made over 50% of conversions this season, was going for it on fourth down and gambling. But in some games, it cost them some games during the regular season because of those plays. And I feel like when it comes to sports, especially football, it's like when you are, the play caller in Madden or whatnot, you cannot call the same play over and over and over again and expect the same result on each and every play. The same thing goes for situational calls, especially when you come up to fourth down, whether it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 4, whatnot. If you look at that situation there, you cannot go for it on fourth down every single time, and especially when you get to playoff football where every single play matters, it seems like. So when you get to that point, and especially when you have 41 plays passing for it on all those plays, and then you have 3 opportunities to go for it on fourth down, I get 1, I get maybe 2, but when you're 1 of 2 at that point, I wouldn't go for fourth down again, especially when you're within a field goal of tying this game up, especially when you've given up 17 unanswered points at that one point. And, they or we'll say 24 points unanswered at one point, and you have the opportunity still in that moment to tie the game and stay in the game. I don't know, man. To me, there's a lot of people out there that are throwing shade this way and this way and this way, but regardless of whatever way you draw it up for where you want to throw the blame for the Lions, it was definitely a miscue on the coaching. because whether it's the fourth down calls or on the offensive side, even though Ben Johnson is definitely getting all the hype for the Commander's job and moving on,
and right so,
but you got to put some of the blame on him in this moment too, because he's the one that calls the offensive plays. And had it not been for his calls, we wouldn't have had 41 passes out of Jared Goff. We wouldn't have had, the going for it on fourth down 3 times, even though I feel like in that situation, Dan Campbell saying we're going for it on fourth down and Ben Johnson draws up the plays. In my mind, that's how I see it. Now, I haven't been in the locker room. I haven't been in the press room. That is an educated guess based on what we see throughout the entirety of the league.
You're absolutely correct. Dan Campbell's not calling the plays, but he is the culture guy that's saying attack and bite kneecaps. And listen, in Dan Campbell's defense, in the interest of full disclosure, Drew Willingham, they do kick the field goal to go to 3-score lead going into the half, basically. So they were at least right in that particular instance. They just never thought about that concept again. And frankly, I think there might have been an element of panic in some of these fourth down calls later in the game, simply because they had seen some of the drops that they had. They had seen some of the things occur that had. And in the case the one earlier in the second quarter there, they were up 14. Perhaps the thought was to put your foot on their neck, and then the Niners scored the touchdown. I think that's the one that really backfired more than anything else, but that's just my opinion.
No, that's a good take. That's definitely a good take right there. I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this game right here. And my man Dante Hill is in the house watching over there on the Sartoba Media YouTube channel and says the blame is on the defense. They had a few drop picks that would have put the game away, especially that bounce pass that Brandon caught. What do you think about that there, Kyle Nash?
Yeah, no, the Ayuk play is normally I kind of scoff at drop picks as a criticism, but yeah, of course you have to point to the Ayuk play. I mean, what a turnaround. You went from having a shot at the ball. Granted, I'm not sure he comes in with the ball or not exactly. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, sure, but you had a legit shot at getting the possession, and instead it turns into a doorstep catch. By the way, the reason why that point about that interception is null is there was a DPI, I believe, called. I mentioned that and one earlier. So the offense still is retaining possession either way.
I like that take there, Dante. My question to you would be, what do you think was more impactful based on your statement here, that the defense dropping the picks, or do you think it was the dropped catch on 4th and 2 by Josh Reynolds? Because, it was right in his hands. We would be talking about the fact they were 2 of 3 on 4th down conversions at least, and maybe a different outcome of this game had he caught that on 4th down. Because you catch that on 4th down, you're able to wind some time off the clock, give the 49ers less time. I feel like you have different play calls that you make in that moment. It changed the dynamic of the game. And it's that 4th and 2 catch or 4th and 2 missed catch that I would say when it was right there in his hands. That's another thing that we need to look at too. I mean, yeah, you can sit here, you can blame the decisions by Dan Campbell. You can blame the play calling by Ben Johnson in certain aspects. But the one thing you cannot argue, and especially, like you said on the defensive side, Dante, where they're dropping picks, when you're a receiver and that's what you get paid to do. When defense, you're getting paid to defend, swat the balls down, catching an interception or scooping a fumble is an added bonus, okay? But when you are a wide receiver, you are paid primarily to catch that ball.
You've got one job.
You have got one job. Yes, sir, you do. And even though earlier in the game, during the first half, you ran the ball one time for 42 yards and a rushing touchdown there, Jameson Williams, on a very impressive play because he should have been tackled like 17 times on the way there.
Yeah, let's make it more embarrassing.
Yeah, hey, that situation right there, especially with how hyped the 49ers defense is, the amount of money they've spent over there on that side, and trading for Chase Young. When I saw that, and then when we went into halftime, I was saying to myself and a few others, I was like, you need to come to Jesus talk. in this halftime, and boy did they get it, because there's no other explanation for that unless there is such a thing as the script in the NFL, which there's I'm just saying, I'm not admitting that I feel like that is the situation, but there is a lot of argument going on about that right now, and we've heard it for years. But there's been a lot more now of the past 48 hours. Well, I would say 36 hours now, since we now see what happened in this game, along with the game that we talked about earlier with Swifty Nation going to Super Bowl. Okay, Dante says the defense picks keep in mind Sutton had a drop picks as well as that bounced off his hand. Here's the thing, Brock can be a turnover machine. The drops by Reynolds are bad, but I'd rather have a QB turning the ball over.
I don't agree, but cool. It's a take. I'm not saying he's wrong. That's not where my mind goes either. I'm with you. But right back to the you have one job take.
Yeah, and I like your take there too, Dante, but I would have to say, when it comes to this, for me, I feel like the wide receiver is paid to catch the ball. So that's where
Dante's credit, the Sutton pick is the better argument, 100%.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, there was a lot of teams that thought that in this situation, the 49ers was definitely going to win this game and go to the Super Bowl. I just think that with the dramatics and what we saw in this situation, we didn't see it going this way. We didn't see the Lions coming out the gate and that 42-yard touchdown by Williams in the fashion that it happened. And then the fact that they had 3 rushing touchdowns in the first half. It looked like this game was all but over in this situation right here. And looking at this, I just, 24-7 going into halftime. This game right there, I just thought it was over. And I was one saying that it was over. And if I were to be a betting man in that moment, I would have told you and many other people, throw your money on the Lions to continue to carry this thing on in the second half. And boy, was I and many other people, and even the doubts in your mind there, Kyle Nash, of the comeback, to see them score 17 unanswered points in the third quarter. I mean, it's pretty historic. I mean, that's something that, Brock Purdy does something for the first time in like 30 years that not many people have done, in leading a comeback charge like he did against that team. I mean, the
biggest comeback in NFC Championship game history? And by the way, Brock Purdy, his 4th game-winning comeback drive with that particular piece. And by the way, the number of that would be in the playoffs overall. I think I think that's a playoff stat. Moreover, there, Drew Willingham, you asked the same question of Lamar Demetrius Jackson. The answer: 0.
0? Okay. Yeah, good question. Yeah, that's a good one. And, the first time it was done in the NFC Championship game, but I believe that within the past 30 years has been done in the playoffs. Because I was reading something. Let me see. I think I might have saved it.
Oh, yeah, it's specific to the championship game.
Yeah, it was specific to the championship game. But as far as in the playoffs, it has been done. It's been about 30 years since it was done. But to see that type of historic
comeback is bigger than that one, for example. But I digress.
Oh, yeah. But to see, and my man Sick Diggy is in the house as well. Good morning there, Sick. Thanks for jumping in. When it comes to this situation right here, I mean, to have a second-year quarterback, a Mr. Irrelevant, got them to the NFC Championship last year. Hey, and he didn't finish the game, which you can now say the games he's finished in the playoffs, he's undefeated. But we saw some woes from him in that 3-pick game earlier this year when they had 3 picks or 4 picks that he had in the game. I can't remember exactly. It's been a long season. I want to say it was 3. Might have been 4.
I think it was 4.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But looking at that situation, when you had the 3 straight games after winning 3 straight losses, for them to turn things around, you bring in Chase Young during that stretch where you had the 3 straight losses, you turned it around. I think that the biggest thing they need to pick up from this situation is When they showed and applied pressure, that's when this game turned around. If they start this game, if they start the Super Bowl the way that they started this NFC Championship game, they will lose. I'm telling you that right now. You cannot go into halftime 24-7 down to the Chiefs and expect to lead that charge to come back. It will not happen. This is not a Disney movie. I'm telling you, it is not going to happen if they play that way in the Super Bowl. But we'll get to that and more in a little bit.
We could jab at that, but keep in mind this game's still 2 weeks away, so I get it.
We could, but we'll get into that preview here in a little bit. Before we do that, we've got how in the Scarecrow did the Ravens mess up? Hey, sick. We did cover that part at the beginning when it comes to the upset of the week. You know, Kyle Nash threw some great points out there. I did as well, you know, especially with, you know, the fact that they couldn't get but less than 30 rushing yards out of there. And, you know, with what was going on the other side of the ball. And yes, people want to argue about that missed PI call on Odell Beckham in the end zone, but Zay Flowers, this, that, and the third of the mistakes that were being made. We definitely covered that. Get a chance, go back and watch the opening drive of the show. We definitely covered that more there, and we're about to go to our next segment here in a second. I think the Lions were shocked more than we were at the half, but went back to being the Lions.
That's a good take, Dante. The only thing I'd come back with, Drew, on this is they went back to being the Lions when the Niners started to show life. They went home too soon. I think there's an element of that theoretically. No, Dante's 100% right. They were probably very surprised and were perhaps celebrating, air quotes, a bit too much. And then when the Niners showed life, they got scared.
They were so surprised, especially when the game was over and they took that. You know, I had to bring Cole up in here for a second. Six says, good morning to at Ryan McCarthy. I was shocked that Baltimore didn't run the ball.
So were we all, Dante. So
Yes.
were we all.
Yes. Because, and Six says that he will appreciate my man. But yes, we were all shocked, especially with the fact that besides Lamar Jackson's running, that's what helped get them this far to begin with. That's what helped get them the number one seed. I mean, yeah, you got Beckham, you got Flowers, you got weapons on the receiving core that definitely played their part during the season. But the overall running game was definitely one of the best we've seen in a while, and he had weapons and ways to mix it up. Now, I said this all year long on this show right here, on my other flagship show on the In or Out Sports Debate on Sartoba Media, and on other Bing Guests, which will be coming back again soon. But in other programs I've been guest spots on as well. I believe we may have even talked about in the student of the game. I can't remember. But yes, I had to throw a couple of bings out there. But you threw the bings, I just threw the names. But when it comes to this situation right here with the Baltimore Ravens, I told you all that you cannot win a championship with your quarterback being the leading rusher and being the one who takes the load of the running. When you have three, not one, not two, but three other running backs on your team combining for 27 yards, and your quarterback has 8 carries for 54 yards, and you want to sit here and say that they've got a great opportunity to win the game? No. Especially when your running backs combined in that situation for 27 yards, yes, but they only carried the ball, 8 times? 8 times for 27 yards? Yes. So you're shocked they didn't run the ball, but they ran the ball as much as the quarterback and got less than half of what he had in the production. It should be the other way around.
Let's blow your mind real quick, Drew Willingham. Brock Purdy had more rushing yards than Lamar Demetrius Jackson.
He did. Oh, Brock Purdy definitely did. You were absolutely right with that, Kyle Nash, because he had 48. No, he didn't. He had 48 rushing yards. Yeah, I was giving you credit, and I went and looked it up, and I'm like, as I'm looking it up.
It was only 48. I thought it was 58.
No, it's 48.
Oh, my bad.
No.
My math didn't math. But hey, listen, the fact that it's that close says plenty. I'll leave it at that.
It's all right. Yeah, I was, shame on. I was agreeing with you too, and then I fact checked Tony Reality to myself right there in the moment, and that's what I came up with. But it's all good. We all make mistakes out here on these streets and these streams, and we both made one in the moment. So hey, we both hit the.
When it comes stands, how is Brock Purdy within 6 yards of Lamar Jackson on the ground? I'm just.
Most people will look at that situation pregame for guessing and say,
"Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, to the no."
And if you would have looked into that pregame and said, you need to bet on the fact that Brock Purdy's only going to be 6 to 7 yards within Lamar Jackson of the rushing yards mark of that day, this would have also popped up as well.
That's terrible.
Along with
that was a lie.
But unfortunately, it was the truth. So, looking at that situation, when it comes to the truth,
You can't handle the truth.
and Brock Purdy again was better on that day than LaMarvelous, what people want to call him. Well, he wasn't so LaMarvelous, was he? Because you didn't get to the Super Bowl. And you may never get to the Super Bowl with LaMarvelous.
So, are you trying to say that Brock's game was more Purdy?
Kyle Nash for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also,
We gotta pause that.
Kyle Nash, we could not have Dr. Evil on here before 10:45 in the morning.
Trouble with haters, Drew Willingham. They're gonna hate. It is what it is, buddy.
Well, guys, with that being said, we got one more comment. A couple more comments. The Lions got shocked. Yes, they did. Sick. They very much got shocked. And 16 rushing attempts. 8 attempts by running backs. Yes, we definitely covered that part. Hey, it's something that we got to look at and say, that's something they got to fix this offseason. It's okay to have Lamar Jackson running around, but the same thing with Josh Allen got exposed a couple weeks ago. You cannot have your quarterback as the primary runner. It's one thing to have him get the 8 carries, 54 yards. I don't care about that. What I do care about the fact is that if you're going to have your quarterback run 8 times for 54 yards, your running backs need to be doubling that in their attempts and production. And you need to have more production out of your entire running core rather than just your running back. That's all I'm saying. That's what I've been saying all year long. And I hope that this offseason they don't tinker around too much except for figure out a way in their game plan to make that happen. Because with the more balanced running core and less off of your quarterback to having to do that, I feel like you'll have more success. But 2, you need to get Lamar to make smarter decisions when it comes to throwing the ball, because when he has made mistakes throwing the ball and turning it over, it's situations like that turnover in this game where he's throwing into double and triple coverage. For somebody who's getting paid the amount of money that Lamar Jackson's getting paid, it's not just because of his legs. It's because of what he can do at the quarterback position with his decision-making, spot-on throwing, and all that stuff. I mean, he is pretty accurate and does play pretty well. He was an MVP.
Yeah, just look at the opening touchdown for the Ravens, Drew. I mean, that was why they paid Lamar Jackson. And I already made the ref point that the triple coverage play arguably shouldn't have even happened and all this other stuff. Listen, it was a horrible decision. Obviously, I think Lamar would even tell you that himself. But let's not ice the man for the one play, okay? Like Zay Flowers' mental errors as a rookie, of course, I think were far more egregious than that one single interception, as horrible as that was.
Well, for your spot on take there, Kyle Nash, I'll give you this.
Acknowledge me.
I acknowledge that Kyle Nash owned that one. Good job, Kyle Nash. You absolutely killed it again. As always, we have
boss.
there it is. The tribal boss He cheated again this past weekend, but I will talk about that on another show at another time, at another date, at another place. But when it comes to the fact that the Ravens and the Lions playoff run is now
Delete!
as they are removed from the playoffs in that moment. Guys, that is that for the opening drive. We're going to take our first commercial break, and when we come back, we have got some more news, a lot more to cover, and especially we got to talk about old Jimmy H over there in the Chargers. We'll see you here in about 2.5.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition,
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
Ready to hang with some fellas who know football? Let's ride. LC Muscles 28.
I think they're the most overrated defense in the league.
Steel Sermon.
We did not trail for a single second.
Tiny Tim.
McCarthy is a bonehead.
A Pizzle 90.
I'm going with my boys. Fins up, baby.
Get ready for the Four Horsemen of Peckham's. Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on YouTube. Poppy J.
You got the option to cry for the government. You got the option to protest. You got the option to keep buying. But this is also an option.
Wise El Jefe.
We're the first tech geeks. We're the first gamers. We're the first everything. Everything. Like Gen X's, we are the ones.
BS3 Network proudly presents the crew from the New York boroughs who never wants that smoke. Nah, they want that fire. Poppy J and Wise El Jefe, Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Check your local listings for your viewing and listening pleasure.
Welcome back to episode 22 of Total Football Talk. We are back and we have got the Gridiron Scoop ahead of us. When it comes to what we have, let's go ahead and take you into that situation when it comes to the Gridiron Scoop. And leading the way for the Gridiron Scoop, let's talk about a head coaching hire that happened here recently, Kyle Nash, that we didn't get a chance to talk about on the last episode, Cole and I, because it hadn't quite happened yet. There was speculation happening, last Tuesday, but it didn't quite come till after our episode. And that being, old Jim Harbaugh going to the Los Angeles Chargers. And will he live up to the hype during the upcoming 5-year contract and lead this team to the Super Bowl? How do you feel about that when it comes to that right there?
I mean, what exactly is the hype he's supposed to live up to? Because here's the thing. It's always tough when you're opposite Andy Reid. I don't think anybody's going to question that. And then obviously, there's this Patrick Mahomes, the second guy. He's pretty good too. With all that in mind, I think Jim Harbaugh is the right answer. You need a culture reset there in the Chargers locker room. What they're doing there in the former San Diego is listen, I made the argument that Staley should have been fired after blowing the 27-point lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars at Everbank Stadium. Okay. And I know cats, including my guy, EJ Christian of the Earnestly Speaking podcast, bing, that has been on Staley's case even longer than that. Okay. That all being said, yeah, I think Harbaugh is definitely the right kind of guy for a culture reboot. He appears to be making very solid hires surrounding him. I think that's a big deal. I think they just announced their GM hire this morning. There's a lot of good there. The problem is that Harbaugh's hands are tied with the salary cap. There's a lot going on there. You know, defensive players are aging while commanding money. Listen, I love Bosa too, but he's not on the field enough, frankly, to justify his dollar number, right? The best ability is availability at the end of the day, right? Speaking as a Niner fan who had to deal with Jimmy Garoppolo, for example. You know, I think the whole concept there of what they're doing with Derwin James getting paid made sense at the time, but now has come back to bite them because Derwin James hasn't played like the best safety in the NFL, even though he's paid like played and paid, how close they rhyme, but they're not the same. Yeah. Offensively, Keenan Allen, huge contract decision coming up. Mike Williams, huge contract decision coming up. Austin Eckler, huge contract decision coming up. These weapons you keep telling me about may not be there for Justin Herbert, who, by the way, is not a rookie contract guy here at the end of the day, right? He's going to command a big number as well for the former San Diego. So you like how I do that, the former San Diego, so I don't get confused with the Rams for saying Los Angeles, but I digress. It's one thing when you have a limitless budget backed by NIL. It's another when there's a salary cap in place. And no, that's not a Jim Harbaugh shot. That's a college football joke. I'm just saying.
No, that was definitely well said, with a little bit of a small percent shot of a shot. But when it comes to this situation right here, I definitely agree with you when it comes to the salary cap situation. I feel like Joey Bosa is going to get traded potentially this offseason because he's got 1 year left on that deal. And I was saying it, I want to say it was last episode, where I feel like a really good landing spot for him to be traded to would be the Lions. And that he could be opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Like, just think about that right there, how that would look over there if Bosa stays healthy, because he has had some issues over the past few seasons. I mean, he is older. He's not as young as his younger brother Nick. So, you know, he's the wheels haven't quite come off yet, but him as the leading face of the defense, I think those days are over. And he needs to be on a team that's a little bit more complemented, and I feel like the Lions would fit that really well, depending on the amount of pieces they would have to give up. You know, that I feel like would fit really well there. That was a place and a destination that we talked about last week. So,
number, by the way, I forgot to mention, absolutely huge.
What was that?
Leo Mack's number also.
Yes.
Absolutely huge.
And he's another one that's getting up there in age too, that's been around for a while. So looking at this team right there, I think that they're going to make some moves this offseason. And the one great part for Harbaugh and the amount of time that he's been in college now is he's been able to see all these players up front personals that they can make the moves this offseason in the draft, and he's going to know a lot of these players. He might bring in some Michigan talent. He might not bring in some Michigan talent. The people that he saw on the field playing against them, yes, we may not know. But the biggest thing that we can say that we do know in this situation is that there will be moves made this offseason, and it will not be at the quarterback position, because he absolutely loves having Justin Herbert in there as his guy, being the quarterback of this team. So that situation right there, I have to say, in this situation, in this moment, that I'd have to agree with old Kyle Nash when it comes to Jim Harbaugh in this situation right here. I mean, 5 years, and you've got to play Patrick, you say LaVon Mahomes, in this division, in this league, but Andy Reid is not going to be there in 5 years. I just don't think he will be, because he's 65. He'll be 66 next year. He may come back this next year and a year after that, but within 3 to 4 years at most, Andy Reid won't be coaching in the NFL anymore. Harbaugh will still be there, and at that point, he will have probably helped establish a winning culture in that locker room. I mean, I think within a year, he's going to at least establish a better culture to where by year 2, they're going to be a team and a force to be reckoned with at that point. So looking at it here, I feel like Jim Harbaugh is going to be making some changes and for the better with the culture in there. Dante says Jim Harbaugh will be extremely successful. He just gets it. Look what he did with the 49ers and Michigan. He's going to make it interesting. It's okay to hit the rebuild button. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I would have to say with that, I got to give you this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you said otherwise, then we'd give you this. But you didn't, so I'm going to give you this again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Followed by this.
Acknowledge me.
I'm acknowledging that was a great statement there, Dante. When it comes to this right there, the 49ers gave up on Jimmy Harbaugh a little bit too soon. And looking at what happened after that, they brought Chip Kelly in after he left, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think, was it Tom Sula the next year, I think? Yeah, that went well.
But Chip Kelly came in after
Tom Sula.
After Tom Sula, okay. And then it was Shanahan in 2019. Okay. So I just remember Chip Kelly coming in, how bad that was.
I'm surprised you didn't mention Chip Kelly replacing Andy Reid in Philly when that came up.
But at least he had better success over there. Like it wasn't it wasn't by much, but he didn't have but at the same time, had it have been as bad as it was in San Fran, he wouldn't have even gotten the second opportunity had he had the production that he had in San Fran and Philly. So I can't get so upset with that. But yeah, Dante, great call there. Who knows what would have happened had the 49ers stuck with Jim Harbaugh, because, I feel like had Jim Harbaugh stayed in 2014, maybe not the next few years, because they did have to do some rebuilding after that. But I feel like by now, if Jim Harbaugh would have been there this entire time, you would have had a Super Bowl already.
Well, and I'll say this about that too, Drew Willingham. Let's keep also in mind that Trent Baalke was certainly not the superior choice in San Francisco, as it all came down to a macho match between the two of them in that front office. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And this statement right here, I'm going to actually save this one, Dante. We'll get back to this because we're going to be talking about Washington here in a little bit. So when we get to that, I'll bring that comment back up. For some reason, we're talking about Washington, and I don't bring it back up. Hit me up with a reminder in the chat for some reason, but I'm going to save that for that situation right there. And with that, we'll go ahead and take it into our next topic in the Gridiron Scoop. So on the next on the list, we were just talking about this game a little while ago when it comes to the Sunday's Lions versus 49ers NFC Championship game was historic for good and bad reasons. Should Dan Campbell get the blame for the second half miscues, or should Brock Purdy get the praise for leading the comeback victory? How do you feel about this one, Kyle Nash? I'll even say it this time. It's been a while since I've said it to you, almost 2 months. Are you in or are you out on this one?
The answer is yes. Either 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. All-time great comebacks don't happen with a little bit of column A and a little bit column B. Kyle, you're sitting on the fence. Okay, that's cute and all, sure, but I'll say this, that Brock Purdy is probably the more important element, because at any point, if the Lions make basically one play, and I think that was kind of Dante's point earlier with the Sutton drop pick, right? One play. We're not looking at what we're looking at, in my opinion.
So you are not going with Dan Campbell.
If the question is to be posed that is Dan Campbell to blame, then I am out.
Okay. So
sorry, wrong show.
So you are putting more on the Brock Purdy getting the praise for the leading the comeback victory. So you're praising him more.
Like 51-49. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so it's very close. This one was tough when I wrote this out there, because I don't want to say for the sake of debate because we're not on that show. Okay. This is we can agree and we can disagree and we can do it in different fashions, and I'm not going to do it that way. But this one was tough. I didn't send this slate to Kyle till almost like 1 o'clock in the morning for a very, very good reason, because the very last question that I put on there between featured attractions and Gridiron Scoop was this one. I had a very tough time finding this question and putting it on there. And when I go back and I think about the answer to this, whether we should put the blame more on Dan Campbell for the second half miscues or Brock Purdy getting the praise for the for the comeback victory, I think we got to go with Brock Purdy as well. I got to agree with you on that because, very young quarterback, only second year in the league. Most quarterbacks, especially that young, down 24-7 at halftime. Coming back, you don't see that type of production where they're leading them to 17 unanswered points in the third quarter. Yes, it was 27 unanswered points going into, before we got another score out of this Lions team, but 27 unanswered points, 17 of them coming in the third quarter. Yeah, you can blame part of that on the coaching calls, and yeah, you shouldn't have gone for it on fourth down as much, and you can put all that in motion as much as you want to, but to have the poise, especially after how you got knocked out of the NFC Championship game last year, especially after starting out undefeated and then losing 3 straight games in the fashion of what you did, and then you struggled in last week's game against the Packers and only had 4 or 5 minutes of really good football towards the end to kind of balance it out enough to get the victory. And then you have this game starting it out. It looks like you learned nothing from that Packers game in the first half of this past game against the Lions. And then you come out the way that you did. Yeah, there's some suspicion there. Of course, people are saying Hollywood wrote the script and this, that, and all it. I know we got to say it just because it's out there and want to acknowledge the trolls, I guess, for a second. But that is not the case. This was just great football of a reaction to getting pummeled in the first half and the textbook example of how you respond. I got to give the praise to old Brock Purdy in this one. And I haven't given really much praise because I've been one out there saying that there was too much hype on this team and too much hype on him. I was saying it the first beginning part of the year, but I will sit up here and
acknowledge me.
I will not acknowledge me. I will acknowledge Kyle Nash and the other ones out there who didn't get too emotional with their picks of the 49ers this year. And I will at least say that they lived up to the hype. And that's why they're in the Super Bowl. From here on out, though, we got other things to talk about when it comes to that. But before we get back to that, we'll go ahead and go into our last topic of this round. And you will see here when it comes to that in the Gridiron Scoop. So our last topic here for the Gridiron Scoop, NFL Pro Bowl games begin and end this week when it comes to Thursday afternoon. Should the NFL continue on with multiple Pro Bowl events, multiple days of Pro Bowl events, or do everything in a one-day agenda? How do you feel about that one, Kyle?
Listen, it's 100% a full week event. The thing that you guys, as fans, may forget is that while you are the reason for the Pro Bowl being a thing, and they need something to keep your addiction leading into the Super Bowl, the truth is that for those players that aren't going after world championship glory, this is a working vacation for them. They get their bonus, they bring their families, they come to Orlando, they do all of that. To have that entirely on one day takes out that week-long vacation time working vacation time, I should say, that they get. And listen, if it's me, if I'm taking a working vacation like that, it's kind of what I do on occasions when I travel for big events, right? I work during the day, I network at night. I don't have a working vacation because I left my family behind. That's a me problem. And trust me, there's been many arguments here in the Student of the Game household about that, he said jokingly. But yeah, no, in this particular instance, I think the event being on multiple days makes sense. I think it's the right thing for the NFL to do business-wise. And I think it keeps hype going throughout the week. And as one event plays early in the week and takes place, it hypes up the stuff coming later in the week and eventually rolls into the flag football event, such that it is. Which, I mean, listen, for me, if you wanted to get rid of the Pro Bowl game because of all the injury concerns, I think the NFL did what everybody was asking for. I mean, how many YouTube videos have you watched, Drew Willingham, about regarding those skills competitions from the 90s, man? Those things are awesome.
Yep. I have been watching them. Kyle Nash been peeking at my YouTube channel, peeking at my YouTube searches, or whatever, because I actually have been watching it. Kyle Nash's IT work, digging into my YouTube channel. Sir.
You, sir, are a great football mind, and they think alike, and I know what you're doing. I am not on the hardware side like you are with the IT action, so I don't know how to do that.
That one with Elvis Gerback. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember seeing one with Elvis. I was like, when did Elvis make a Pro Bowl?
Wasn't he a Chief at that point?
I think so. I want to say so. Yeah, because it was after Gannon had gone to the Raiders, because Gannon was with the Chiefs and the Raiders.
Yeah, he got a lot of numbers for a minute there. If you remember, his backup at one point with the Chiefs, Sonny, I got you, Babe Bono, had like a string of games, like 8 or 9 or something. I forget the number. Maybe it got as high as 13. I don't remember, but went on an undefeated streak, opening his time as a starter in Kansas City as well. It's a thing.
I remember playing NFL Game Day 98. That's a very old football game. I was like 11. Yeah, I was like 11 years old. NFL Game Day 98, Sonny Bono. I remember I was playing with the Chiefs one time, and Rich Gannon got hurt or something like that. Sonny Bono comes in. He was a terrible quarterback on that game, and I just, for some reason, when you brought up Sonny Bono, it made me think about how terrible the rest of that game went. I ended up throwing the controller, breaking the controller, got grounded. Even though the wild thing was that I saved up multiple summers of like doing yard work and grass cutting to buy that PlayStation. I got grounded for breaking my own thing that I paid for. Like, how does that work? But hey, that made me think about that. You bringing up Sonny Bono. Scarred childhood you brought. I'm just kidding. But when it comes to no, in that moment, NFL Game Day 98, if you guys are looking for some nostalgic game playing right there, I vote for NFL Game Day 98. And with that being said, I guess I got to say this.
Stop it. Get some help.
To myself for thinking back to that flashback and having a rough time right there when it comes to that.
Drew Willingham. It's okay.
When it comes to the gridiron scoop, that is that. Now we got to take it to the grand champ, and the grand champ goes something along the lines of this.
Total football talk.
Where your dogs at when it comes to the dog of the week? When it comes to your grand champ, Kyle Nash, between these two games that we had on championship weekend, who is your pick, the dog of the week in this week's grand champ?
Listen, as a 49er follower, Drew Willingham, your graphic makes perfect sense. All I have done throughout the year is remind the world and campaign for the student of the game player of the year, the student of the game MVP, Christian McCaffrey. Well, friends, I have to tell you this. It's time to throw the dog a bone on this particular one on this. Brock Purdy is the grand champion for Conference Championship Sunday. Listen, I take nothing from the performance of Christian McCaffrey, and who knows, with the Super Bowl, he may be getting 3 name treatment sooner than later. Let's not forget he was 1,001. He was 1,000. That's receiving and rushing yards player with the Carolina Panthers, suffering through that purgatory or straight up hell, depending on who you're asking, before coming to the 49ers and making an immediate impact. That all of the above being said, Brock Purdy had the key runs and moments. Sure, there were some errant balls that could have or should have been picked, but I don't see them on the stat sheet as a turnover. So a day And without his contribution, the Niners aren't able to do what they do. Brock Purdy reminding the world that game manager is not just a slur, and that when healthy at the left tackle position with Trent Williams, Brock Purdy can be a difference maker. That's my grand champion, and I'll leave it at that.
You know, that was so good there, Kyle Nash. Maybe throw that up there.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Had to, because that was spot on. Very good. And, you know, I figured you would pick somebody from your team in the 49ers. And with that being said, I'm going to have to go with a different team in this choice. A team that has now made it to 6 consecutive AFC Championship games. And, you know, past 4 out of 5 Super Bowls they've made it to, winning 2 of those already. Having a chance to win a 3rd one here in this upcoming one here in, 12 days, we'd say. And for this one right here, you know, for the greatness of what you like to say, the one Patrick LaVon Mahomes, yeah, he was 30 of 39 in this game and 241 yards and a touchdown. But I'm going to go with somebody else on the offensive side. And with all the distractions that this guy has had, you know, for the past 2 years, doing with what we do, you know, with the podcasting game, but having far more success. I mean, based on one, the hype behind him. I mean, he is now one of the most decorated tight ends in NFL history, arguably now the greatest tight end in NFL history, and on some levels, depending on what you're grading him for. To have all that, and then in the public eye, dating one of the greatest pop stars in history, whether it's a ruse or not, okay, it looked pretty realistic after this past game, so I'm not going to throw the ruse out there or anything like that. I'm not going to be part of that, of the trolls out there that are getting upset. What I will say is I got to give my dog of the week, Travis Mike Kelce, like you like to call him by his full names out here in these streams there, Kyle Nash. And the reason why, 11 receptions, 116 yards and a touchdown. Someone at 34 years old, someone who's played the amount of time, taking the amount of abuse in a position that takes a lot of abuse, because you're not only a receiver, but you're a blocking tight end as well. And Travis Kelce does it better than a lot of the people in the league, where, yeah, he's flashy and gets those plays and extends plays for first downs, gets touchdowns. And now, you know, him and Mahomes have the most combined touchdowns in NFL history in the playoffs when it comes to, I want to say 19 or 20 touchdowns now in the playoffs. I think it's 19. But when you look at that and all the hype, all the accolades, and he still goes out there and is putting up the numbers that he's putting up in the production, I feel like even though I could easily give it to Patrick Mahomes for, you know, completing 30 of 39 passes, almost 250 yards, getting the ball in the end zone, I have to look at what Kelce's done in this playoff run alone, having 2 touchdowns the week prior in the division round, having another touchdown again here, and helping with the momentum behind him and this Chiefs team that they have had now for a half decade, reaching yet another Super Bowl. I have to give it to old Travis Kelce for my dog of the week. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take this into a next commercial break. When we come back, we've got the featured attractions. We'll see you here in about 3 minutes.
Coming up next, the featured attractions. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated, creating content magic in the real world.
This little right here. Look at the inside of these cakes. Now, when you bite into it, just as I demonstrated while you were talking at the beginning of your discussion right there, I could taste the drugs inside of this cake, sick. I could taste the addiction within the cream filling of this cake right here, to where they not only us with that cake right there, but they made an ice cream out of it. They made an ice cream out of it. A 1-pint Christmas tree cake ice cream. Look at that little just smile up there. Look, she is up to no good on there. Look at that. Look at that smile on there, sick. She knows that she got you. Got him is what's in her mind right now.
Acknowledge me.
Look at that little smile right there. She's up to no good.
D. Willie in the evening. Thursdays at 11:15 p.m. Eastern, 10:15 p.m. Central exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $sign DWillie87. Go ahead and hit him up on the Cash App and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Slide some Willie Bucks.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
That pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Colt Johnson, and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon, and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
Welcome back to Total Football Talk. It is now time for the featured attractions. And Kyle, the featured attractions is this. It's actually a featured attraction on this week because, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit. I know it's 12 days out, and, we're not going to sit up here and get so excited about a Pro Bowl. Okay, we already had the Pro Bowl topic in the last round, but when it comes to the featured attractions, the 13-4 first seed in the NFC, San Francisco 49ers, take on the 11-6 Kansas City Chiefs. 49ers, under 2.5, and when it comes to the fact that they are going to be the favorite to win this game right here. And, it's on Sunday, February 11th, 12 days, 6:30 p.m. kickoff on CBS. How can the Chiefs keep the 49ers off balance? Looking back at how they played in that first half of this past game, how they played in the divisional round, if it wasn't for the comeback, you would definitely say that they were off balance quite a bit because they wouldn't have gotten to this point, to the Super Bowl. So how can the Chiefs capitalize on that and keep them off balance for the entirety of the Super Bowl rather than for a first half?
Blitz in the same fashion that they did against the the Ravens, by the way. Brock Purdy may not run as fast or as often as Lamar Jackson, but Brock Purdy is a dude that is going to try to run the football, but that's not the reason I'm worried about that. You have that blitz attack because I believe your secondary is the ability to then better contain the weapons all around Brock Purdy. And by the way, make damn sure that you don't make the mistake that the Cowboys did by having Micah Parsons battle Trent Williams all day. No, you line up Chris Jones on the opposite side against another tackle, the weaker tackle on the team, just like you did in week 2, by the way, against the Jacksonville Jaguars at Everbank Stadium. You attack the rookie Anton Harrison instead of Walker Little on the left side. I only mentioned that because I was there in person for Jaguar Report and the 3-point conversion. Bing! But all that being said, I think that's a key element there. Chris Jones is the key player of the game for the Kansas City Chiefs defense, and that secondary will need to show up. They cannot give up long plays. That linebacker core will be tested in a way that they haven't against most teams because most teams don't have a combination as lethal as George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, and Kyle Juszczyk. What's a fullback? Exactly. So I think that's a big element there to keep the Niners off balance.
I think that's a really good, solid take because they're going to have to do that because I don't think that the offensive side of the Chiefs, because one, they are not as strong as they were, 2 and 3 years past because of some moves that are being made. I don't think they're going to be able to air it out, and Mahomes is going to be passing for 250, 300 yards in this game. I think we're going to see probably under 225 passing yards for Patrick Mahomes in this game. I think the Chiefs are going to be able to contain, the 49ers are going to be able to contain him, and we're going to see, a really, really tight game that's going to see basically how strong the running attack is going to be against both sides of the ball. I think the how both teams can run this ball are going to make a big difference on the outcome of this game. So, and a lot of that comes to the defensive side of the production, and we're going to have to see how things in a overall sense take place when it comes to the Super Bowl. But I like where your head's at with that. It's going to all depend on how the defensive production is for your side when it comes to, containing the 49ers team. And the Chiefs have been known for how strong their defense has been this year. They're going to have to live up to that hype in the Super Bowl in order to get over the hump for now a third time in 5 years in order to win another Super Bowl. Let's go ahead and take it to the next one.
Who's giving them the business?
Now, right here, when it comes to can Brock Purdy outduel Patrick Mahomes with everything we just said? Can he outduel Patrick Mahomes? What do you think there, Kyle?
Well, at the end of the day, this is probably one of the biggest misnomers in sports. The quarterbacks don't battle each other because if that was the case, obviously Patrick Mahomes II would crush on Brock Purdy. But the dude brought a lot more guns to the fight. I've been over this time and again that Brock Purdy is not even the 49ers MVP, let alone not even the league MVP. And it'll be on the strength of that the 49ers find success, not anybody winning a shootout or anything like that. But by the way, by the same token, Brock Purdy could have a game with more passing yards than Patrick Mahomes II and still lose if Andy Reid continues to shock teams like he did the Bills, for example, 2 weeks ago, running the football.
Okay. So let's say that the defenses on both sides contain the running game, but the secondaries are leaving open a little bit more space to throw the ball down the field a little bit. And do you think that if the game turns into that type of situation to where it could potentially be open like that for both sides, to where we're seeing both sides sling the rock, do you think in that moment, even though you just said that Brock Purdy can still have more passing yards and stuff than Patrick Mahomes and still lose, do you think if it comes down to that, to where both sides of the running game is being stopped, secondary is leaving open some spots for you to air it out a little bit, do you think in that moment that he loses to Patrick Mahomes if it comes down to that type of game?
Yeah, it's likely. It's not impossible that Brock Purdy could win that game because, again, I would cite the weapons. And let's not forget, world, that Patrick Mahomes II can only throw the ball. The other side has to catch it. And everybody was so impressed about there was a lack of drops, against the Ravens this past week, as if that was a huge headline. That's a problem when that's your weapons supporting your quarterback. But on paper, as you put it, yes, a shootout is advantage Chiefs.
Okay. Well, I'll be interested to see how that pans out, and definitely be interested to see what old Cole says when he comes back next week. But with that, let's go take to our next part of this topic.
Who's giving them the business?
So when it comes to that, we've answered those questions. Overall now, when it comes to this game, what is your prediction for the outcome of Super Bowl right here?
See, here's the thing, Drew Willingham. I'm going to do something the world may not like, but I am going to withhold that. I am not going to be in a position to where I make a prediction here, and then I'm expected to follow suit with it on the Huddle Up podcast. Bing! Or follow suit with it on the Student of the Game podcast. Bing! Or even talking with Mark Moses on 1560 The Fan in Melbourne. Bing! I can't afford to do that. I will say this. It's a lot more confusing to pick this game on the surface. However, because it's already out there in the public space, I am on record already saying that the AFC Championship game, that winner would go on to hoist the Lombardi. So basically, America, all you're watching for is to see if I hold true to that lock that I made on the Huddle Up podcast. Bing! 2 Tuesdays ago.
Well, Kyle, the beautiful part of, today, tomorrow, next week, and the week after is you can always change your mind. You can always say when you go on these shows that, yeah, I said they were going to win here, but after some time of thinking about it, I changed my mind. It's the beautiful part of having an opinion and changing your mind.
True.
So, 12 days out from this game, are you saying that you are leaning more to what you had said 2 Tuesdays ago in saying that there's a possibility that you are going to stick with that, or based on what you saw in this NFC Championship, at least answer, are you going to be closer to being more swayed to leaning towards the other direction without giving a full-on prediction?
I will not say a possibility that I am not going to say a possibility that I maintain my AFC statement. I'm going to say at this point it's a likelihood.
Okay. So I got enough of an answer out of that, and much appreciative for you at least leaking that much more than what Adam Schefter would have leaked out during a Pat McAfee show. But when it comes to this right here, I'm going to have to say that for anybody that was picking against the Chiefs, in the divisional round, and then here in the championship round, because they were on the road, okay, well, I think Patrick LaVon Mahomes, as Kyle loves to say with the first, middle, and last, definitely proved that it doesn't matter if he's on the road or if he's at home. He's going to play the same type of ball that he would play whether home or away, and it's up to the other team to have a better game plan to outbeat him, because it can be done, because he lost 6 times during the regular season. So it's not like he's unbeatable, because if that was the case, he'd be undefeated at this point in the season. So, he's not a superhuman, because in that case, he would have lost. But in this situation right here, you got to look at his body of work and what he's done at the age of 28 years old. I have to say that I feel like the Chiefs are going to win this game. There's not much that's making me change my mind, except for, the 49ers have a great defense, but the Chiefs have proved this year that they got a great defense as well, and probably the best defense out of their entire past 5-year run that they've had for this dynasty building situation for this franchise. I have to give it to the Chiefs when it comes to my pick for the Super Bowl, and we'll get into an actual game prediction of the score next week when Cole's back, but that's my pick for this one.
Who's giving them the business?
Now, the final hour of this episode, I will be, just me talking with you guys in the comments and have some more to share with you. But for the first couple hours, Kyle was with me today, and I want to give him a huge shout out. Thank you again, Kyle, especially for taking the time to be here for this episode. I couldn't have gotten this far and had as much of an entertaining episode for the first couple hours without you. So thank you again for being here on short notice as well. We got up last month and had, the In or Out Sports Debate episode 105. I planned to have more episodes, but then life happened. But I'm glad that you and I and Travis were able to get up and do that. And that, before the end of January, we were able to get up before you make the hike. Is this confirmed? Can you tell us here on the Total Football Talk before you roll out, will we be seeing Kyle Nash at the Super Bowl this year?
We will not be this year, unfortunately. Listen, life happened. What can I say?
Yeah, that does make me sad because I definitely enjoy the coverage that you have brought the past, couple of years here with the student of the game stuff at the Super Bowl, being on Media Row. Hope to see you there again next year, and still hope that we can make the trip together at some point and get up there in Radio Row. But when it comes to this right here, definitely check out Kyle's show, The Student of the Game, every Wednesday night. You can see it on what you're watching right now for Sartoba Media. You can check him out on the Student of the Game channel on Facebook. He's also with A7BN Sports for that as well. The Huddle Up podcast also produces that as well on the YouTube channel. And you can also see the Duval Dive podcast, which is on a break right now because, of course, the Jaguar season is over. but you'll see him and Travis soon enough between those same airwaves as well as the PSF app. Just like we got here on this show, wouldn't be there without Kyle. So much love and respect to you there, Kyle. Hope to get up with you again very soon for another project out here, my man.
An honor, joy, and privilege to jump aboard. Cole, I hope everything goes better for you, and you're back next week to do your things on the TFT. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there in the streams, my man. So, guys, we are now here for another hour with me, but when it comes to that, we have to take this into the chopping block. And before we do that, we got one more commercial break. I'll see you here in about 2 minutes.
Next, the chopping block and snowflake of the week. This is Total Football Talk. Join Ryan McCarthy.
I became a Jets fan because Kermit the Frog was my favorite Muppet because he was green, and the Jets wore green. That's how I became a Jets fan.
And Dustin Henry.
ESPN is cashing all in on let's pay a few personalities and we'll just kind of fill in the gaps.
As they walk you through all of the world of sports from their perspective.
The Albany Empire, it's a literal circus.
No credentials required. Where, Ryan, say the tag.
Where you don't need a press pass to talk sports.
Every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. On YouTube and where you can find all podcasts. This is a BS3 Network presentation.
I want to do a TED Talk, but I don't have anything to talk about yet. I'm getting there.
Life is for the living. We're not here that long.
You can learn anything you want to learn without any money spent.
What do I really enjoy? What do I really want out of life?
I am your host, WIZE.
Are you in a life holding pattern? Well, this is for you. Welcome to the Stuck in My Mind podcast. Live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. Football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up a possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at
9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central.
Exclusively on the Sertoba Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel.
Welcome back to Total Football Talk as we are back for the last hour of the show. And with that being said, I want to go over some comments that were left here. And we've got Dante here saying, I blame Dan because you have to give credit to Kyle making the adjustment and getting his guys ready. They could have Dallas. Yes, absolutely correct. You could say that when it comes to that situation right there. As well as Dante saying, I'm okay with getting rid of the Pro Bowl game, but put it with the NFL honors and give them their jerseys. I would say that's a pretty good take right there as well. I got to give it up for Dante for that comment as well. If you guys have any other thoughts when it comes to this stuff, leave your comments here in the chat and I will acknowledge them at some point during the show. Kansas City tackle in space and turnovers. Yes, that was definitely part of what we were talking about in the last segment. San Francisco stopped the run, no yards after contact, make Patrick beat you with his arm, and D-line will get there. Okay, that I like that too, but at the same time, you don't want to put Patrick in that situation because he's proven it time and before they even had the better defense that he can definitely win it with his arm. They got 2 Super Bowls in the past because of that. So, and yeah, he might have tried. He might have gotten shaken up in that game against the Buccaneers when Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II beat him because, of course, you've got a more experienced team on the other side of the ball because they had other veterans, too, that might not have been in that big game, but they played a lot longer that understood situational football. So now that Mahomes has played now for half a decade, he's been in the league for this long, I think he's learned from that, and that's why we were able to see the type of victory that we saw in championship weekend. So when it comes to that right there, let's go ahead and take it into the chopping block and see what we got for these next set of topics. And with the first topic here within the chopping block, the Chiefs, the 49ers, staying in hotels 25 miles away from the Las Vegas Strip. Did the NFL get it right with the travel accommodations for both teams? And when you think about that right there, I would say that they did, because, you got both teams staying in hotels near the stadium, within a few miles, and they're there at the Vegas Strip. A lot of teams back in the day, and probably still now, have a curfew where you got to be back in the hotel at a certain point. And when you're playing in Vegas, or, upcoming in the near future in New Orleans, those two cities right there are probably the worst type of towns to be staying in a hotel very close to where the action is. So for that, I got to say, good on the NFL for keeping them a little bit spaced out. I mean, I'm not too sure in this moment when it comes to what their workouts will look like, and how the transportation back and forth. I mean, me, with what I do for a living outside of this, I got to drive like 45 minutes or so to work, and that's roughly around 35, 40 close miles, I'd say. So for me, I think that would probably, just gauging on that, depending on how bad traffic is over there, because it's Vegas, traffic could be worse. They could be looking at 30 to 35 minutes in travel time from hotel to the events. So when it comes to media day, when it comes to workouts, walkthroughs and stuff like that, it's a lot of traveling. You're going to be spending at least an hour from your round trip traveling to and from what you're doing in that day. It's a lot doing a day. It's a little bit of weighing, but I think that it would be better to have that type of weighing on your players than be close to the Strip, the potential of them sneaking out in the middle of the night and they're partying until 2 and 3 in the morning, potentially later, and then you got to play Super Bowl Sunday. We have seen in the past, and I want to say back in the 80s, if I remember watching one of these documentaries right, Chicago Bears, I think, was the team that went out the night before the Super Bowl. There were players that went out the night before the Super Bowl, got sloshed, played in the game, and still won the Super Bowl. I'm sure that there's been other situations with other teams in the past that did that, but did not have the same type of success. So I feel like learning from history is very important, which is why we have history class in schools. And I think that the NFL learned from history right there, and not having these teams stay too close to the action before their big action on the Super Bowl Sunday.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
So with our next topic in the chopping block, I was kind of hoping that I would have Kyle here for this, but at the same time, understandable, life happens and you got things to do. And he was only able to hang out with me till 11 today, but definitely appreciate him coming in. But this was a topic that I wanted to ask him, because this person right here that we're about to talk about came from the 49ers, a team that he's a fan of, and a team that he definitely can talk to you unbiasedly about, as you saw with us talking about these teams, before he left. With that being said, the Washington Commanders, Adam Peters, the new GM, has signed on for his greatest NFL challenge yet. How will the Commanders' philosophy change in terms of acquiring players? I think that their philosophy in acquiring players will change in the fact that they won't be going after the older players with tenure, with decorated backgrounds within the NFL. That's something that even before Dan Snyder came on, before the previous ownership, when Jack Kent Cook was the owner, this is something that this team has been notorious for 40, 50 years now, with bringing in players from other teams that were stars in other teams, but had a little bit of gas in the tank in some cases, and in other cases didn't have any gas in the tank by the time they came and signed a ridiculous deal with his team. I think Adam Peters, with what he did with the 49ers, he was instrumental in bringing in George Kittle, other players as well, including Brock Purdy, I mean, people that were not on the radar as much that he saw as a talent for the 49ers. Yeah, he was the assistant GM, but you go back and you do your research. He was one of the ones who was actually finding these talents and recruiting them and bringing them in. So Brock Purdy wouldn't be a thing in the 49ers without Adam Peters, nor would George Kittle. And they were two of the biggest pieces this season, along with Christian McCaffrey in the trade that came from the Panthers. But you take him out of the equation, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, two big finds under the Adam Peters tenure in San Francisco. I think, he's going to have some success when it comes to finding the right talent to acquire for the Washington Commanders. It may take a few years to see the results on paper, 2 to 3 years to see this team really drastically improve. I think this next year is going to be full of some more bumps in the roads, depending on what they decide to do with that second overall pick, who they bring in, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, whoever it is, the moves they make in free agency, potential trades. I think the trades are pretty much over because they traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young for those draft picks this year. I think those were the more higher profile trades that they could potentially have, unless they decide to move Terry McLaurin. But I personally would not want to see that. If they did and got a first round pick or something out of it, I could understand that, but I would not move Terry McLaurin for less than a first round pick if that were the case. They really got to address that offensive line. I am still going to be one to say that I have not given up on Sam Howell, even though it seems like the rest of America has, and the rest of this, fan base for this team has given up on him. I think that he's still young enough, and we did see some flashes of goodness from him that they could keep him in Washington. But what will Adam Peters do with that? That's a big question. But I think with the second overall pick and the talent that you have coming out in this draft, unfortunately for Sam Howell, they're not going to waste that pick on, someone else unless you use that pick, even though it may be a little bit higher, but they need to complement Terry McLaurin over there on the wide receiver side. What if Adam Peters decides to bring in old Marvin Harrison Jr.? You got McLaurin, you got Harrison Jr., you got weapons for Sam Howell at that point. You build up that offensive line with the other picks throughout the rest of this draft because you have a great set of draft capital here. I don't know, Adam Peters. You're probably not watching this show, but if somebody can get the message to him, I think that if you had McLaurin and another complimentary great wide receiver talent of a prospect within Marvin Harrison Jr., son of a Hall of Famer who played with old Peyton Manning, the genetics are there. It might not be exactly what Marvin Harrison was during that tenure with Peyton Manning, but he could get there. He has the potential to get there based on the genetics that he has. So I don't know, Adam Peters. Yes, Sam Howell did hold on to the ball quite a bit, standing back. I mean, there were several cases where people were saying, especially, Travis Holmes came on the In or Out Sports Debate and said about the amount of time that he's holding the ball in the pocket. Yeah, I actually acknowledge that and give you that, okay? However, he took way too many sacks, not based on the amount of time that he held onto the ball, but the overall time he was given for the blocking by his offensive line to make the plays. And some of those plays where he was holding the ball for a while, he was dancing around in the pocket. He wasn't always just standing tall like a Statue of Liberty, like what Thomas Edward Patrick the Brady II was doing during his majority of his tenure in the NFL between the two teams that he played for. But looking at this, I feel like, there's a lot of decisions to be made. More likely, they're going to go with the quarterback for the second overall pick. I would personally like to see them go with Marvin Harrison Jr. because whether you stick with Hal or you make a trade or you sign a free agent quarterback, which there's not really big names to choose from, and please don't bring in Derek Carr and please don't bring in Russell Wilson. I would really be upset and may have another health issue if that happens again. If they make that, I will definitely have another health issue if they bring in Russell Wilson or the aforementioned Derek Carr or Jimmy G. If any one of those three, I'm going to have another health episode. I'm just going to call it right now when it comes to that situation right now. McNabb went out the night before and got blank-faced. So was that – I remember him saying he had the flu. So he didn't have the flu. He was hungover. Is that what you're telling me there, Dante Hill? That is news to me because I must have been sleeping under a rock during the time they announced that he was blank-faced during that situation. Let me know here in the comments if that is the situation there, Dante, if he was truly blank-faced or if he had the flu, because I could definitely understand now why T.O. was so upset with him after that game, if that was the case and it wasn't the flu. San Francisco stopped the run, no yards after contact, make Patrick beat you with the arm. Yeah, we did go through that last one. But when it comes to that, because I was talking about that towards the end of that last section there, yeah, so McNabb going out the night before and getting blank-faced. I would say it on another program, but because this show right here, we do our best to watch what we say, and especially with it being on Cole's platform, I don't want to disrespect it by actually saying what you have right there in the blank face. But I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when it comes to getting blank faced. So, you got to be sleeping under the rock if you don't know what the blank and blank faced means. So when it comes to that, let's go ahead and move on to our next section. Well, hang on. T.O. put it out there also a few players. Okay. So I must have been sleeping under a rock, but at the same time, with me not really following that team as a diehard fan or anything, you do, so you would know that information for that. So I'm going to trust you on that information right there that McNabb was blank-faced the night before the Super Bowl. Very interesting. Anybody else know about that information? Back him up here in the comments.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Our last topic here on the chopping block. Now, say this is the last topic on the chopping block for a very big reason, and that being Belichumped by the Falcons. Yes, Belichumped is a word that I came up with over the weekend. Belichumped, when it comes to, have we seen the last of Bill Belichick as an NFL head coach? Breaking news is that
Ain't nobody care. Who cares? Ain't nobody care.
I don't think anybody really cares. Based on the reactions that we're getting out here, after the man had 2 interviews with the Atlanta Falcons and then doesn't get the job, and pretty much Belichick took the... All right, people.
Let me talk to you.
When it comes to this situation right here, you got a man who is a 6-time Super Bowl winning head coach, a man technically who's got 8 Super Bowls because he's got 2 as an assistant with this time with the New York Giants, 86 and 1990. So 1986 and 1990, he won 2 as a assistant under Bill Parcells. Had an opportunity to win another one as an assistant with the New England Patriots back in 96 when Bill Parcells was the head coach and he was the defensive coordinator under Bill Parcells with Drew Bledsoe as his starting quarterback.
What?
Which is funny because that's the man that he benched for Tom Brady to be the quarterback in New England. And you can't really say bench because, yeah, he got hurt. But when he was healthy, he still had the opportunity to come back and take his job. And that's the time when I say that he got benched.
What?
If you disagree, all I got to say is,
Yeah.
that's the truth when it comes to that situation right there. Bill Belichick, decorated career in the NFL. I want to say he's like, 15, 16 wins away from breaking Don Shula's record as the most wins all time by an NFL head coach. He may not have a job this season in the NFL. He's 72 years old. And I think if we go a year without Belichick, then there's a really good chance that we will not see him come back after this season. Like, he won't come back in 2025. 73 years old. I can't remember the last time somebody at that age was hired as a head coach after having time off, like after having a year off. And a lot of people are saying that this could be the karma for what happened with Tom Brady walking out of New England and walking out of New England because of Belichick. And then you have 4 seasons without Tom Brady. You don't even win the division. You get into the playoffs once under a wild card spot and lose in that first game of that playoffs. Didn't make any noise, and I think it was kind of an embarrassing loss as well. You haven't had much success without Tom Brady, and if you were the coach that you were definitely hyped to be during that 23, 24-year run in New England, I think that you would have already at least gotten to single digits away from breaking this record. You would have at least got another 7 to 8 wins to get you within single digits of breaking this record, especially going 4-13 in this past year. I mean, that was absolutely atrocious. I think had you gone like 7-10 or 8-9, and then the Patriots let you go, I think that you would have a little bit more noise in the background of teams looking to bring your services on for this season. I think the fact that the Dallas Cowboys had an opportunity to let go of Mike McCarthy and bring you in, considering how much Jerry Jones likes you and is friends with you, has been widely noted in the media when you think about that. I think the fact that they didn't bring him in that situation right there, the fact that they had the opportunity to bring him in and they didn't, goes to show that Belichick is at the end of his rope here. There's been some, noise in the background as well about a potential podcast or some type of show with him and Nick Saban, as Nick Saban is retired. If Belichick comes back, if the team actually decides to bring him on, there was noise that Nick Saban can come back to the NFL as a defensive coordinator because, yeah, you're retired from being a head coach, but defensive coordinator, it is still a job, but it's not as much strain as what being a head coach of a big top tier college program is, because you're actually just being the defensive coordinator. Somebody else is taking on the stressful reins of the situation right there. So I don't know. There's a lot of things throw out there that what could happen over the course of the next month or two, because within the next month, by the end of February, probably the middle of February, if he didn't have a job in the NFL, he ain't going to have a job in the NFL. So there's really only 2 potential landing spots that he could really go to, Seattle and Washington. And, between those 2 teams, I don't think that either one of them are going to basically bring in Bill Belichick. I do not see either one of them going with this team right here. So I don't see him going with either one of them. Like Mike Vrabel has a better chance of getting picked up by one of these 2 teams than Bill Belichick. And even though there was a rumbling in the dark of Bill Belichick is still sought out by the Washington Commanders, but they are not actually like exercisingly going after him because they don't want to disrespect him. I kind of think that when you're someone like Bill Belichick and you make that announcement to the public, it's kind of disrespectful to say that about the fact that you're not going after him because you don't want to disrespect him because they're not prepared for it. I guess they're interviewing everybody first, but I feel like you're disrespecting Bill Belichick if you don't give him an interview and you have an opening for a head coaching spot. So you should at least see what the man has to say, even though most of us have our minds wrapped around what that success really was in New England. I think that based on his resume, you still should give him an interview. So we'll see if the Commanders do that within the next week or so. I mean, there's a lot of coaching candidates that are still out there. Ben Johnson has definitely been a big one, has been named for the head coaching spot in Washington, and with the news of what's been going on with Seattle, with Pete Carroll being moved to the office basically as a consultant and, having that title taken away from him as the head coach, it's going to be interesting to see what they do over there. But I think we're going to get the answer for Seattle as far as who their head coach will be before the Commanders give their answer, because they are literally taking their time making the decision because they want to make the right one for the culture to build it to where it should be, but also the best for these players and getting the most out of these players you could possibly get, because this team has not been able to get the production they need from these players for a very long time. Close to 17, 18 years consistently. If you take away that 2012 year where RG3 had the dominance in his rookie year, 2007, outside of that year, 2007 was the last good year that they had. So that was that was 17 years ago, man. It was 16 and a half, because we're not through with this past season. By this upcoming season, it'll have been 17 years since they had that type of success if you take away 2012. Okay. Because 2012 is literally a flash in the pan, because we haven't seen anything quite like it since or before, based on the production of a rookie quarterback for that team. Not saying, not saying for any other team, but for that team in particular, yes, that is what I'm saying. So when it comes to that, when it comes to the chopping block, that is what I got to say when it comes to that right there.
Who's giving them the business?
Dante's got some comments here. I think Bill may be asking for too much control. Yes. I think if Bill can deal with having somebody there as his GM, then he'll have a better chance of coming in. But the reason why the Commanders are really exercising that right to interview him right now is because of what you just said there, Dante. He's asking for too much control. Adam Peters was brought in as a GM for the Commanders. So Bill probably may have said, in the background to these other teams that are potentially interviewing, for the job, that I don't want to be interviewed if you're going to have a GM in place, or if you're going to be bringing in a new GM. I'm interviewing for both positions, GM and head coach. At this point, being the age you are and seeing the unsuccess that you have had over the past 4 years without Tom Brady, I think it's time to at least relinquish some control. And that's why, it didn't work out with you staying in New England, because had you been able to relinquish that control, you might have been able to go back for a 25th consecutive season and still exercise the chance of reaching the greatest win total for a head coach in NFL history. Kind of reminds me of Tom Coughlin. Yes, but this is on a higher stage. I mean, this is a bigger stage, and with a head coach of bigger clout, because he's got 3 times the amount of Super Bowls as a head coach than what Tom Coughlin has. So for that, I agree, yet somewhat disagree with that. It reminds me of that time frame, but at the same time, it's not quite what it was.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Now let's take it to the snowflake of the week.
Total Football Talk.
That's right. It's that time again to pick the snowflake of the week. And I got to tell you, it's gotten a little bit, you would think it would get easier with having less games in a week to pick the snowflake of the week. But for this situation right here, it was kind of tough, because we had 2 games, 2 situations, I would say two games with situations where you got players that are underutilizing their skills in some situations. And I would say that my snowflake of the week, I would have to give, in this case, to the entire running back core for the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. The fact that you had, 3 players combining for 8 rushes for 27 yards is an absolute dumpster fire, spearheaded by these right here, being dumpster pelicans. I feel like that on this day, because you only have 4 teams in the playoffs at this point, there's only 4 possible dumpster pelicans you could have for the week. They were the number 1, the one with the tallest beak right there on the right side. That is your dumpster pelicans for the week. Now, how do you have multiple people as one dumpster pelican, you can do something like in the formation, like what the Power Rangers did when they used to form together to make the really tall robot to destroy everybody. That's what I'm saying. You combine all three players for 8 carries for 27 yards into the tallest dumpster pelican that you could have. Look at the right side with the big old beak right there. That is the Baltimore Ravens dumpster pelican play. 8 carries, 27 yards. One more time. That dumpster pelican right there. The top right one. And you know what? We're going to give it a little bit of loop action. We're going to bring this back because we can. Why? Because I said so. Right there, that dumpster pelican right there on the right side. The big old beak standing on top of that food line bag. That right there is what I say is the Baltimore Ravens running back core outside of Lamar Jackson. 8 carries for 27 yards. You have to look at yourselves as the snowflakes of the week. When it comes to that right there, I am picking you 3 running backs. Gus Edwards, Zay Flowers, yes, you're a receiver, but you still ran the ball 2 times for 4 yards. And Justice Hill, 3 carries for 3 yards. You call yourself a running back? And you had 3 carries for 3 yards. Congratulations. Yeah, you probably did better than I would do as a running back in the NFL, but still 3 carries for 3 yards. You get paid to do that for a living. Gus Edwards had 3 carries for 20 yards, had 17 more yards, and the same amount of carries. So for that, I have to blame the players in that situation. Oh, you don't blame the players, you blame the coaches. Yeah, I mean, in some ways you could blame them for some aspects of the game plan, but they still ran the ball 16 times, okay, between Lamar Jackson and the 3 other running backs, okay? Still a decent amount of runs, okay? So, they could have made some better calls, especially in the second half, to adjust to what was happening in the first half. I'll give you that, okay? But the fact that they still ran the ball 8 times for 27 yards, seeing that lack of production, that would sway me to call less running plays in the next half too. So when I put all that in perspective, yeah, you can blame them. But at the same time, I blame the running backs too, because you played like a bunch of dumpster pelicans. I cannot say it enough. That's what they did, and that's what I'm going with. And when it comes to that situation right there, before we go into our last part of the show, I'm going to get super hyped for that one too. You haven't seen anything yet when it comes to my hypeness on this episode, but we have one last set of mother, father, and commercials to go through. When we come back, you're about to see me go to level 10.
The 2-minute drill is next. This is Total Football Talk. Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast. Every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets. Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commander's Gridiron Report. You want your commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commander's Gridiron Report. Every Monday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern, 2:05 p.m. Central. Exclusively on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J. Cool.
Where my soldiers, side, right side. Commanders, where's my soldiers? Left side, left side.
Join the transporter to Hades.
Your butt and gut becomes one.
Join the reformer of hooker whores.
This is my daughter, Placenta Booty Johnson.
Join the bronze god.
Whenever you are in distress, take off your baseball cap and throw it in the air.
Join your very own superhero of broadcasting, Chris Bass.
So whatever color crayon they get, they palm it and do 2 circles, and that translates to, I can be the black people.
As she takes you through the week's paces in Baseline. Live every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central, Pacific time zone people, just stay asleep when this is on live and just catch the recording. Exclusively on the Chris Bass YouTube channel.
Welcome back to Total Football Talk, as we are back from that final commercial break. And, normally we would have the 2-minute drill. And, even though we don't have the 2-minute drill, I'm going to bring the 2-minute drill music up here for you, just to kind of soothe some things out, because if not, I might get from my hosting duties without Cole when he has to take a break, and I don't want to get fired. Okay? I'm just kidding. Just playing out here in these streams. But when it comes to this situation right here, we're not having a 2-minute drill because we don't have games to cover except for the Super Bowl that we've already covered with Kyle earlier. And I look forward to getting Cole's thoughts with that next week. But I think for this part, for this, 2-minute drill on fruition, let's talk about something that I've talked about on other shows in the past. And that is some things that happened on this day in sports, but let's take it to football related things on this day in sports. On January 30th, back in 1973, the NFL draft was at this point in 1973 on January 30th. And a team that Cole loves, that is no longer with us in the NFL, but it's still his number one team in his heart. The Houston Oilers draft John Matzczak from the University of Tampa Bay with the first overall pick in 1973. That was on this day in 1973. Now, on this day, in 1983, 10 years later, the formerly known as the Washington Redskins won Super Bowl 27 when it comes to, Super Bowl 17. I don't know why it's 27. I'm a little bit out there when it comes to waking up still this morning, but yes, they won Super Bowl 17 on this day in 1983. John Riggins was the MVP as the Redskins beat the Dolphins 27-17 on this day back in 1983. When it comes to football on this day in 1983. Now, looking back to 1994, 11 years later, in the Super Bowl on that day in Super Bowl 28. So, yeah, we're in the 20s now, but for Super Bowl 28 in 1994 on this day, January 30th, Emmitt Smith was the MVP for the Dallas Cowboys as they beat the Buffalo Bills 30-13 in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Georgia Dome for Super Bowl 28. Where were you on that day in 1994? I know those of you that were listening, most of you are definitely old enough to be around for the past 30 years, because it was 30 years ago today in 1994 that Emmitt Smith was the MVP of that game. When it comes to that, what do you guys think? Let me know here in the comments. Where were you in 1994 on that day right now, as we are currently still live? Now, in 2011 on this day, the NFL Pro Bowl at Aloha Stadium, Honolulu. The NFC beats the AFC 55-41. D'Angelo Hall of the Washington Redskins at that time is the MVP on this day back in 2011. On this day in 2022, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Cincinnati. Oh, no. I was wrong. 2022. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Kansas City Chiefs in overtime, 27-24 on this day 2 years ago to advance to the Super Bowl. That happened 2 years ago on this day. And last year on this day in the NFC Championship at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, the Rams beat the 49ers 20-17 in 2022. My bad, not last year. I don't know why I said last year. But so on this day 2 years ago, we had the NFC and the AFC Championship. The Rams, at that point, you would arguably say they upset the 49ers, and the Bengals upsetting the Chiefs. So that was what happened on this day in sports when it comes to football, not just sports in general, but for sports being football. That is what my call is here for on this day in sports history. On this day.
Who's giving them the business?
Yes, I am giving you the business right there. And we got a comment over here from Diggs, by the way, 7. So we got a Cowboys fan up in here, Trayvon Diggs fan, saying, hey, what's up? Well, what's up there, old Trayvon Diggs fan? Thank you for tuning in for right here. If you are Trayvon Diggs, then tell us something that only Trayvon Diggs would know. And Mickey Delaney says, no, Dante Hill, how can you blame the coach? The coach do not the player play the game. That like blame the ref, throw a flag on the players for holding a face mask. Okay, I mean that's an interesting take there, Mick. I don't know. It can go either way because gambles when it comes to what Dan Campbell had done, he gambled a little bit too much, and it cost him. Then you also have Josh Reynolds dropping that ball on 4th and 2. There are many other things that we could argue about when it comes to the way that game went. The Ravens, when it comes to that situation too, there's a lot of people blaming the coach, and there is and was a poor game plan for that game because the Chiefs did a really good job for their game planning for containing Lamar. And I say that and I said it last week with Cole. I said, if they can contain Lamar Jackson, the Chiefs are winning this game. And they did contain him because when you have 4 sacks on Lamar Jackson in the championship game, to me, I say you held up your end of the deal of containing him. What do you guys think? Let me know here in the comments. Mick, you're saying some things right now. Yes, I understand the spelling part. Not mad at you. Things happen. It is what it is. But when it comes to that situation right there, I'd have to say that I feel like that it was a little bit 50-50. It wasn't one-sided when it comes to that situation. It was a little bit more 50-50.
Who's giving them the business?
So between on this day in sports with football, between the snowflakes, I picked that. We've gone through the chopping block, the featured attractions, the grand champ, the gridiron scoop. What I said was the upset of the week between the Chiefs beating the Ravens and the game of the week being the 49ers coming back to score 17 unanswered points in the third quarter to tie it, 27 unanswered points altogether before beating the Lions 34-31. We've only got really one more thing that we've got to do on this episode, and that is take it to the post game.
Total football talk.
As long as it's one. Oh, that's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
Now, for those of you who've been bearing with me today, I do apologize. We started a little bit closer to 9:15 than 9 a.m. I guess, I don't know if it's Windows or if it was HP decided to have this BIOS update for my computer this morning, and it took astronomically forever. That's probably the nicest way I can say. So we got started like 9:14, 9:15, somewhere in there. So for those of you listening and on the PSF app, for those of you watching on Comey Media, on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and then for Stratoba Media, on YouTube, X, Twitter, and Twitch. And even today, I'm trying it back out on my Facebook page just to see how the reactions are between Meta Universe when it comes to their restrictions and who is watching on there. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this today. This is much different than what we usually have. For the second time in 22 episodes, I've been at the helm steering the ship today as Cole is traveling back. Holiday times before, and same thing with this, with family stuff now. Definitely, when you're on the road, you can't be doing this. You cannot be doing this and driving. So just hope safe travels for my man Cole as he's heading back today, and that everything is working out for him. For me here today, I'm excited that we have football in the future for the Super Bowl, but we also have the UFL as the XFL and the USFL have combined to make the UFL. And Cole and I have talked about that. But one thing we've also talked about too is we will be covering that as well. So once the Super Bowl is ending, we'll be covering that, and then we'll be getting you ready for the UFL. Now, of course, there's not as much hype and people wanting to listen and watch the UFL, the XFL, than before. But I get excited about it, and Cole gets excited about it because last year we're talking about how, or at least I was saying, the people were agreeing with me, how watching the XFL at that point was like watching WWE and NFL combined as far as the entertainment aspect. I don't think the game's rigged or anything. I just want to say between the entertainment within the game, that's what I was getting excited about it. And if they can bring that back for the UFL this year, I'm going to be ever so hyped, because watching the Washington Defenders, or the DC Defenders, not the Washington Defenders, but the DC Defenders, and the beer snake and just the antics they had going on there. I am going to a game this spring. I'm going to find a way and find the time to go to a game this spring when it comes to that. But we'll talk about that more after the Super Bowl when we don't have much NFL to talk. We'll be working NFL into the show, I'm guessing. I'll talk more to Cole about that later, but I'm going to guess that we'll have some NFL offseason news, but also talk to you primarily in those episodes about the UFL. So looking forward to that. More news here in the post game is, I've had one great 22 episode run with Cole here talking NFL action. There was some ups. Well, there was a lot of ups and some downs with certain things that we had to talk about, because nobody wants to talk about the doom and the gloom stuff at times. But, we had to do it for the sake of NFL news. So there's a lot of things, a lot of goals that I have in mind for 2024, within this show, outside of this show, for other projects that I myself have going on, that Cole has going on as well. I'm sure that he has those goals and stuff too, and other things that we're going to work in place throughout 2024. But the one thing I can say that I love doing each and every Tuesday morning is getting up on here and talking with you guys in the chat, talking with, Cole, of course, missed him today. Kyle Nash was here, did a fantastic job for the near 2 hours that he was here. It was on me that we didn't get, more time with Kyle this morning because of the computer situation, update, getting it ready. Couldn't get fired up to 9:15, and then he had to roll out at 11. But that was already understandably known before we started the show. So, again, shout out to Kyle for being here. I thank you again for the time. As always, look forward to getting up with you again at some point in the near future on another project. But unfortunately for today, we had to cut it a little bit short when it came towards the end of that. But, now that the NFL playoffs have pretty much come to a close. I mean, we do have the Super Bowl, but that's like a thing in itself. I mean, you have the playoffs and then you have the Super Bowl, because, there's nothing else after the Super Bowl. So to me, in my opinion, the playoffs are over. All we have now is the ultimate championship game, the NFC, the AFC, the Super Bowl. Okay. The fact that the Chiefs are picked as the underdogs again, I feel like you have to be, not fully with it upstairs if you're going to say this game is going to be a blowout by the 49ers. I can understand the 49ers being the favorite, and especially under 2.5. So basically, by a field goal or less, they're picking this team to win the game. And I could see that happen based on the amount of talent that they have. The fact that they were, like we talked about earlier in the show, able to bring in Chase Young because you've got Brock Purdy on a rookie scale contract, only in his second year of the 4-year deal, which gives you still 2 more years, at least 1 more great year before he starts pressuring you into probably a contract extension. But you got at least 1 more, if not 2 more years to bring in a few more pieces this offseason and next to continue to build this thing to where you can have something close to what the Chiefs have. That's if you win this game in 12 days. I don't think you're going to win this game. Some people are probably going to tell me,
stop it. Get some help.
But when it comes to the 49ers winning this game, I'm going to say, and the reason why I'm saying this is because you got to look at how they played against the Packers. Yeah, they were coming off a week off, but the week off in that case was supposed to help you more than give you that type of negative production in that game. Okay. Then you look at this past game and what happened in the first half. And yeah, you were able to turn things around and make the right coaching adjustments during halftime and get the best production out of your players in the second half to get what you got as a result to get to the Super Bowl. But I'm telling you now is if you have any type of lack of production and play like you did in the first half in this upcoming game against the Chiefs, there is no way, and I repeat, no way you're going to come back and score 17 unanswered points against the Chiefs to tie it, let alone if that is the case, or 27 unanswered points to take the victory. There is no way you're going to do that against the Chiefs. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I cannot say it enough, and you could be sitting over there saying, what? But it doesn't matter because you're not saying it in the chat. So because I'm saying it and you're not, I guess it's calls for this again.
Yeah.
Now, if I had a guy up in here right now, he might consider clicking this button.
We gotta pause that.
And I love that, dude, but I'm going to have to sit here and say,
I think I got my swagger back. Oh.
And that could be the situation right here for the 49ers. If they truly feel like they have their swagger back after what they did in the second half of this past game, we could see a really, really, really interesting contest in the Super Bowl coming up. I think that we're going to see a pretty good game. It's going to be close. I'm not going to give a score prediction this week. I'm going to wait until Cole's back next week and we work around what he has built in for the slate. I literally on this episode did the best I could, with, I would say, less than 48 hours to really put this thing together. Nothing wrong with that. It's just how life is. And, to get us to where we're at this point, almost 2 hours and 40 minutes in, almost an ability to do a full 3-hour episode a day. I'm really happy for that. I'm really proud of that. And had a lot of fun with you guys in the chat. Sick Diggy, you were here for a little bit with a few comments. You got to give a shout out, a big shout out to Dante. Dante was huge in the comments today. Mick coming in towards the latter part of the show. Definitely appreciate you guys for being active and participating in this. If you could, no matter what you're watching on, whether it's Comey Media or Sartoba Media, if you guys could please do us both a favor, click that like button. And if you feel it in your heart is to share the content, we greatly appreciate it as well because we're doing our best out here in these streams. I usually say out here in these streets, but we're streaming right now, brother. We or sister, whichever one of you are watching, doesn't matter. So we are streaming. We are flying right through here. I'm doing the best I can to bring this on out to you, and especially this.
You should know your role and shut your mouth.
I'm knowing the role, but I'm not shutting the mouth because I can't shut my mouth until we actually go to the outro here soon and the show closes. But before we do that, I guess I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. If you did not see the story that I shared last week, want to say last week. Yeah, I can't remember which day it was because my days run into each other. My full-time career really wiped the floor with me last week. We were pretty busy, but it's for good reasons. It's good to be busy. I'm not complaining. But I just can't remember which day that I posted it. But what I can say is that I announced that the season 2 of D. Willie in the Evening is coming soon. I'm not announcing the date yet, but what I will tell you guys who are watching on here is that the shenanigans are coming back very soon, along with a new show called Beyond the Streams. It's going to be with a Z to pay homage to Cole, my man Johnson over here. Beyond the Streams will be a one-on-one show where basically, we'll have guests on there. I'll be basically talking about their backgrounds and their past, present, the future, the good stuff. And if they want to talk about some bad stuff, they can. That's on them. But that's going to be Beyond the Streams with a Z coming out pretty soon, as well as the In or Out Sports Debate will be back very, very soon as well. I would say D. Willie in the Evening will be back before In or Out Sports Debate. And In or Out Sports Debate is definitely not coming back until after the Super Bowl. I think D. Willie in the Evening may possibly be back beforehand. But these announcements I'm going to announce fully later in the week. This particular week, got to look at the calendar, got to look at some scheduling. And I want to, dot my I's and cross my T's and do my X's and O's before I announce the date, put my foot in my mouth. Because I'll even admit right here, as I'm on the post game telling you, that when I had the In or Out Sports Debate show in December, when I had the one episode bringing it back after a little bit of a hiatus, that was literally only a special edition for the holidays because I had the time to do it in the moment. And it was not an intention to bring it back and have it back every single week at that moment. But I will say that once it is back, and when you see the next episode, once that episode is here, it will be a weekly thing again. So that's why it's been on ice for as long as it has, because I don't want to start it back up again until I'm 100% sure that I'll be able to keep this thing going each and every week. It's a good thing to be busy, okay? It's a good thing, especially when you're getting paid and it comes to a career and having things to do. I'm not complaining whatsoever. I miss the fun of being able to do all those shows in a week in consecutive days, and sometimes doing multiple shows in a day of different content. But with what's happened over the past couple of years, and especially when I had the stroke and stuff, my thought process on things have changed, not drastically, because I still have the same thoughts, but my actions in things are a little bit more strategically thought out, to where if you overload your plate too much, eventually you're going to crash at some point, and that has happened to me. I'm just glad to still be here to be able to talk about it, because you got pretty close to flirting with the other side, if you know what I'm saying. So I know there's been a little bit of rambling here and there about plans for this and plans for that, and a little bit of football talk in this post game, but a little bit more of the actions of plans. But in order to fill the space of time necessary for what this show does, I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you guys, because normally I'd be bouncing back and forth with Cole on certain things at this point, or like in the past episode with Kyle. But Kyle unfortunately was able to, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but Kyle had other things lined up to where he can only go to a certain amount of time today. And for this point, it's me filling airspace at this time, and not like one of these. I am not filling it like a dumpster pelican there. I will never, ever rate myself on the dumpster pelican list. And why, you ask? Because to do this show solo for the last hour, well, we're pretty close to the last hour, and to be able to pick it up where it is at, I would never, ever rank myself as a dumpster pelican, because if I did, I would expect you to do this. Delete! Man, Cool McCain is in the house. Just played your commercial a few minutes ago, bro, with the Fly Eagles Fly. And nobody likes you, and you don't care. I love that part when Cole does that. It's awesome. It's kind of like on the Four Horsemen of Pick'ems. I love when he goes, Tiny Chin! And then on on the what was the other like when he goes on the Chris Bass commercial, the bras go like Cole, and then with what he's done with my Commander's Gridiron Report commercial, you cannot take anything away from the greatness of our guy Cole Johnson. He's definitely missed today. I missed my man Cole today. I hope I did it justice with hosting this show by myself, especially going for almost 3 hours. First 2 hours with Kyle Nash, past hour by myself as I'm starting to wrap things up. But yeah, nobody likes you and you don't care. I know I'm probably putting a little bit more dramatic on there, but it's like I'm being a professional wrestler. I'll bring the hair down, take the shirt off, and go, you don't care. I don't know. I'm just getting animated in this moment. But Cool says the Ravens couldn't beat the refs and the Chiefs. Come on. Now you're talking Super Bowl last year.
Stop it. Get some help.
I'm going to start bringing in the transition. I did not know I was going to get this amped up. Come on now, Cool. Let me throw this out there.
That was a lie.
Along with...
We gotta pause that.
And the survey says... Followed by...
Stop it. Get some help.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's safe to say... Cool. Thank you for showing up and getting me to go off the rails. But in response to this right here, my man Bishop is coming back from the grave.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
Oh yeah, brother. I'm capping for real. Along with those laughing emojis. Had to bring back the fire. You're getting me all amped up out here in these streets.
What?
Well, out here in these streams.
What?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know your boy's not going to be here and take this today. I am not taking the... I took the L 13 times during the regular season with those commies. Those commies right there played like the #1 dumpster Pelican. Well, #2 since they have the second overall pick. They played like that second one standing over top of that Food Lion bag off to the side. The one with the Hershey bar wrapper in between their winged pigeon toes. Yes, that dumpster Pelican right there. Look how much you've got me amped up right now in this moment. Cool McCain. I'm sitting here thinking about my dumpster Pelican team, and you have got me capping from 11 to 12 to midnight. Don't know what that means, but it means something, and that's what I'm going to say in this moment. Cool need to slow his roll and stay in his lane.
Let me talk to you.
Mick, I actually approve of this message of us going off the rails in this moment. We needed this moment. We needed this energy to find another 10 minutes to make this a 3-hour show so I can look Cole in the eye next week and say, I did it. I did a 3-hour show on a whim and a hope and a dream. I did it. And I missed you in the process, but I did it. And I did it because Cool McCain came up in here and said some blasphemy to get me amped up in the moment. 11 versus 14 is difficult. Yes, it is very, very true. And he says, Mickey Delaney, never. I hope I did the announcement right. Never. That's how I'm feeling in this moment. I've been taking L's since week 10 and in the off season. Yes, you did. Yes, you did take L's since then and in the off season, in the playoffs. And I'm afraid that when it comes to the off season, you'll be seeing this a little bit more. There's going to be, a Kelsey retiring or potentially not just coming back to the Eagles. I think that if Kelsey does come back, he's going to come back with a different team, and it could potentially be the Chiefs because, he started with Andy Reid. He got something brewing over there, and even though they do have, Mr. Humphrey over there as a great center over there, Kelsey can go over there and be his backup, and get paid, a decent amount of coin to get into the ring. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I just think that don't be surprised if it does happen. I think that he's going to retire an Eagle. I think that he will, he says he's not retiring. He's not retiring, but he won't leave Philly. It depends, man. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I just got a feeling that if he does come back, he's going to go to Kansas City, finish it with Andy Reid, and he'll still be able to sign a one-day contract and retire with Philly and retire an Eagle. But Philly's not going back to the Super Bowl next year, cool. You know it, and I know it. There's no way that they are going back to the Super Bowl next year after what happened this year, okay? And I feel like if Kelsey really wants to get another Super Bowl, or the one thing that's eluded him in the entirety of his NFL career, because he's played with his brother on every single level except the NFL. What if it's not about the money? What if it's not about the Super Bowl? What if it's just about the opportunity to play with your brother one last time and do it on the biggest stage in the NFL? Whether you're a starter or not, I feel like that could potentially happen this offseason. He could stay in the league, but he could go to the Chiefs. But at the same time, more than likely, if he does come back, he will go back to the Eagles. Either way, NFL wins if Kelsey's come back. Travis is not going to Philly. He's not going to Philly after all the success he's had in Kansas City. With Coach Reid, with Patrick Mahomes. If you're Jason Kelsey, you have the opportunity to do that and stick with, if you're, I just feel like that would be a little bit too much for him to do and make that move. For Travis Kelsey to move to Philly. You got me all jumbled up. Yeah, I see you laughing over there. I was like, it took me like 2 seconds to basically think of cool when it comes to that.
Delete!
And to keep it within wrestling.
Acknowledge me.
I rest my case. But, again, Kelsey's probably not going to Philly. I mean, Travis Kelsey's not going to Philly. Jason Kelsey probably not going to Kansas City. It would just make a really good story. But based on how he was reacting at the end of that game, hugging his coaches, even though he did it last year, and I think the year before that, he said, I think this time he really means it. He's got 3 young kids at home. He's my age, 37 years old, or will be 37 by the time the NFL starts up again for 2024 season. And he was even talking about it, not this year, but last season, saying that, he doesn't know why he keeps putting his body through this. And now you're a year later into this, and I just don't think he comes back next year. Honestly, if we're going to do that, and yeah, he was upset. You say that he was upset. I would say he was upset because you got to the Super Bowl and you lost. Okay, but you gotta look at it this way. He's still, one of the highest paid centers. He is the highest paid center in the league right now. $14 million, I believe, is what he got paid to be the center for this year. And then what he's done. I mean, he made another Pro Bowl this year, and he has been contemplating retirement for the past few years. It's kind of like what Brett Favre was doing towards the way of on his way out, especially with Green Bay. Then they called his bluff, put in Aaron Rodgers, trade him to New York, and but this situation is different. I mean, he signed a 1-year deal to come back. I think, and you could tell me a little bit more if this is the case or not, Cool McCain. I think there was a possible, 1-year extension from that contract, like an additional year, but Kelsey has to exercise it. I'm not going to look it up right now since we're about to roll out of here real shortly, but let me know here in the comments if that's the case or if it was just a exclusive 1-year deal, or even after this show ends. Let me know here in the comments whether it's on Comey Media or Shatoba Media, and I can go back and check. I'm interested to see if that is the case or not. But either way, it has been one great year and one great career for Jason Kelsey. I mean, yeah, you didn't have the great way to end the stretch from week 10 on, but you still got, elected to the first team All-Pro again. I want to say it was the 8th time that he was elected an 8th first team All-Pro. So that's huge, real huge if you are playing the center position, a position that doesn't get enough love and attention to begin with. And for him to be as mobile and agile as he has been at that position, can't take anything away from him. At that size, you've got to love what you're seeing out of that man over there on that side in the center position. But guys, let me know here in the comments what your thoughts are for the overall playoffs when it comes to what happened in the NFC Championship, what happened in the AFC Championship, and what we're going to see in the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. Nobody's getting excited about the Pro Bowl. And if you are,
stop it. Get some help.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some people out here, when it comes to the truth,
You can't handle the truth.
this is how it is. Because in that case, if you could handle the truth, you wouldn't be getting so upset when you take the Cool comes back as we get ready to roll on out of here and says it was only a 1-year deal. That's what I figured. I just couldn't remember if there was some type of 1-year clause where he could exercise his right for it. I don't know why I was thinking that. Again, it's Tuesday. And for those of you who know where I'm at in the career side, I work a mid shift. I work I guess it's kind of a mid shift. It's like 4 p.m. to 1 a.m., something like that. Okay. So I'm technically still waking up when the show goes off. It starts off in the morning. And I had to have a good amount of caffeine this morning to get this going because I had to flip sides to the host side today. So thank you all for tuning in. And why we hire Kellen Moore? That's a good question because the Cowboys let him go for a reason. The Chargers let him go. Hey, I'm just saying. And hear what I will say about the Pro Bowl. You're fired. Mick, I'm not picking up what you're throwing down. So please help me help you when it comes to
Acknowledge me.
Because in some cases, I'm feeling this way.
Now, that is absurd.
I'm just playing with you guys. Thank you all, as always, for participating here in the chat, for what you do, for the joy that you bring me and Cole each and every week with the participation here in the chat. There is one great saying that Cole says at each and every show, but I'm not going to say it because I will butcher it. I have too much love and respect for my guy that I will absolutely butcher it if I say it. But what I will say is this. Again, got a lot of love and respect for Cole and for what he's done to build this show right here. Yes, he will be humble and give me credit as well. Saying that he couldn't do this without me, but honestly, I could definitely not do this without him. He's built a great foundation to where the only thing for today I had to do was write the topics and show up and click buttons and be here with Kyle, who definitely working with Kyle makes things so much easier along with Cole. The two of them are, there's other great people I've worked with. Cool McCain is in the chat. He's someone that I've collaborated with a couple times. Great to work with. Wise El Jefe is another great one out there. But for people that I would say that I've worked with on a more consistent basis, on a more regular basis, between, Cole and Kyle, the two of them absolutely knock it out the park each and every time. And there's nobody else that I feel like, no offense to anybody out there, but there's nobody else that I could have brought in on like a 36 or less than 36 hour notice of switching things up, which is no shade or anything thrown, but in that time frame, there's nobody else I know or comfortable with enough in 36 hours to bring in, write the slate for, trust to show up at 9 a.m. in the morning and be ready to rock and roll. And all of that was on Kyle this morning. He did great, but this wouldn't have been possible without the foundation built by Cole. And got to throw all the love and respect out there. Missed him this week. Looking forward to having him back next week. And we did it. We made it to 3 hours on this show. We only had 2 games to recap. We talked a little bit about the Pro Bowl, and we talked a little bit about the Super Bowl. I'm going to flex my Sertoba Media shirt right here because I'm hype about that. I'm looking forward to what Cole and I can do next week to talk about a Pro Bowl recap for one, but talk about what we expect to see in the Super Bowl for 2, along with whatever NFL news comes out this week. And I'll be interested to see if Ron Rivera actually gets a job as a defensive coordinator after what he did this year when he took over for Jack Del Rio, calling the defensive plays and running the defensive side, even though he had 2 assistants to help him out. You can have all the assistants in the world to help you out, bruh, but that doesn't mean you're actually going to do great things as a defensive coordinator for other teams that need a defensive coordinator. I know I'm talking like this and throwing an actual, like, some type of impersonation out there, but this is just how I feel when it comes to covering Ron Rivera and talking about him being a defensive coordinator in the NFL. So yes, I might as well put my pinky up to my ear, to my mouth here as I continue to talk like this with a cup of Joe, maybe a macchiato or whatever you want to call it, sitting over here acting like a bougie person with a shirt and tie and probably some awesome aviators and a cowboy hat. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to sit here and say. That I don't think that he's going to actually be able to do this as a defensive coordinator anymore in the NFL. And that's what I'm going to say with this impersonation and call it at that. Everyone, thank you as always for tuning in to the shenanigans here for Sertoba Media, as well as this show that is also being broadcast on Comey Media. For myself, Drew Willingham, I've only got one more thing left to do before we look at one great outro, and that is to tell you to stay safe out here in these streets. You don't have to go home, but you got to get on up out of here. Hope you all enjoyed this week's episode 22 of Total Football Talk. Look forward to seeing you next week to preview the Super Bowl. And as always, stay safe out here in these streets.